water?
Meeting comes to order at 5:31. We will now take a small recess to have dinner. Okay.
Facilitating that discussion. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to review the previous board team development session that we had a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
And since that time, you've also done some work, so we're going to see where we are and where we're not with that. Third thing we're going to do is we're going to really look at
The whole packet is his, I
both
think.
in your board roles. What are some of the challenges and the actions that you need to take to continue to be highly effective as a board? And then the next thing we'll do tonight is establish meeting norms, because there's a difference. I know you've developed some board norms, but the board norms have to do with you as a board member. The meeting norms have to do with how you function when you meet and your behaviors and actions in that setting. And then the last thing we'll do is, what are our desires and our commitment in leading this district to the next level? Not only for this coming year, but think about the next 3 to 5 years, because that's critical. You always should be planning not just 1 year ahead, but at least 5 years ahead. So those are the expected outcomes for this evening, and we hope to have enough time to cover them all, okay? I'm going to turn it over to Lloyd and to Rob at this time. Yes.
So we're going to pick it up right there, and I want to thank each one of you for, again, your gift of time, which you do over and over again for the youth in our school communities that we all serve together. And so I know that Velma and I have had an opportunity to talk about our objective. What we're trying to do is really formulate some norms that we all can lean into, we all can agree to, that we all can support. I can tell you that Francis Barsones has been just a really great champion, as well as Rob, a great sounding board. We have our attorney, Mr. Rob Decker, here with us this evening, because I think it's important to have a legal optic and a legal perspective when we're looking at things. And one of the desires that I've heard over time from the board is really kind of creating some guidelines about what we do. And I can go through that backstory about how we started with this document, which is a complete draft. It's in draft form, and it's in draft form for a reason, so that we can have conversation about these guidelines. And I know the last work that Dr. Villegas led us in matriculated into some board norms that we all agree with. So if you can just take this packet, I think Dr. Villegas can go through this too. And I want to thank Ms. Garza Lopez for sending this back to me. It's been floating back and forth between a number of our trustees and doing the wordsmithing and making sure it reflects our last Team of 8 meeting. So on page 9, you can see that we do have Southwest ISD Board of Trustee norms that we all talked about the last time that we were together. And this is good for the board. I think what we want to get into is, do we have norms for other aspects? And so that's going to be the other 8 pages in this document. So as we look at the norms, the artifacts from our last time that we met, some of the norms that we all agreed to was develop a shared vision based on our core values of the district and community while respecting individual views. We will communicate effectively as a team of 8 to focus on maximum achievement for all and create the we culture. We agreed to, we will model respectful dialogue and contribute to an atmosphere of trust and openness. Another one was, we will request all information through agreed upon channels and in keeping with our governance roles. We will conduct ourselves with integrity and represent the district at all times, and we all lead by example. We will respectfully inform, educate, and engage our community. If concerns arise, they will be directed to the appropriate personnel. We will recognize the importance of professional growth and development, agree to participate in experiences designed to further our knowledge and understanding. Learning is continuous and lifelong. And we will set time on an annual basis for self-evaluation and to review our progress toward adhering to our agreed upon norms and beliefs, which brings us into our continuation of developing ourselves, learning from one another as a team of 8. And a lot of the work that Velma's going to do cross-pollinates with the operational guidelines that I'm going to go through, take the first hour to kind of go through with everyone. There's nothing in here that's written in stone because this is draft, this is for conversation. The objective is to open up dialogue and to have critical conversations without being personable, without attacking an individual. We all have different perspectives, so we should surface those perspectives, get into the tough work so we get to the other side where we all kind of work together in collaboration. So the first 8 pages of these guidelines, I can tell you Francis and I, we did our research. We found a number of documents from other Texas school districts that we looked at. We actually, this is the second iteration of something that was originally 40 pages long. In our feedback and conversations with our attorney and Rob Decker explaining our objective, what we're trying to create. We got some direction. We went a different direction, so we went from 40 pages to 8 pages. And I can tell you that the core of this document that you see in front of you, a lot of it comes from our friends to the north, Northside ISD. We did some outreach to Northside, explained all the research that we're finding, and a lot of what we found was basically a document that was cutting and pasting from local board policies and putting in another document. So basically we were recreating board policy as opposed to recreating guideline or creating guidelines and that aligned them with our policy. You will see as we get into this document, there's some asterisks. Those asterisks represent the fact either the guideline doesn't match the current policy we have, or our current policy is missing that part of the guideline. So I can tell you there are 12 main components of this first iteration of board operational procedures. And I'm going to lead on this. I've asked Mr. Decker to review this document, which he has, and he's already outlined some areas that we need to have conversation around this evening. But if we were to look at the 12 components of this document, so they basically cover those things that are frequent, either frequent at Northside that we thought we would like to leave in our guideline, or 2 of the frequencies that we have that Northside doesn't have that we included in ours was around electioneering and action committees, number 11, number 12. So the 12 items that we're going to look at today are candidates, new board members, and what does that onboarding look like? What are those expectations? If there is a newly elected board member, how do we handle that as a system? How do we handle that as leadership in Southwest ISD? The second one is required board training. These are all scattered throughout. I'm just trying to give you the main title. The third one is meetings, how do we conduct meetings, and there are kind of sub domains to each one of these. So meetings, I know there's a lot of things that we want to talk to, have conversation about, so that we can all get to a place that we have an agreed upon board operational procedures. This thing's even changed names. We're titling it Board Operational Procedures today. Last week it was Board Operational Guidelines. It was a BOG. It was Team Operational Guidelines. So this is where we landed on. The fourth component is communication. What do we all agree upon in communication? Number 5, school visits. Number 6 is complaints. You guys are representative of the community, and therefore you receive a number of concerns, complaints. What's our agreed upon measure of how we contend with those. Number 7, confidentiality of materials. How do we treat those district materials that may not be subject outside? And we do it right, but it needs to be part of our guidelines. So we're trying to create a document that can live and follow the district well into the future. Number 8, that whole idea of travel reimbursement. Number 9, the creation of a board-specific board calendar. Number 10, board officers and terms, and what does that look like? And number 11, electioneering in our district. Number 12, those action committees that we have. And so we took north side, we southwestized it. We went to the policies to make sure we either had alignment supporting the verbiage that we have in here. Doesn't mean that we have to leave the verbiage that we have in here, but this is where we are today. So if we have to change one or the other, then that's work that will continue well beyond this meeting right here. So I'll just start. I think the best way to go through here is kind of go through here and just kind of paraphrase. I don't want to read each one of these because I know you guys are very capable of reading, but I think I really want to get us to one of the points that I know that we have in here that has evolved differently over time, and that's when we have patrons speaking to the board, what that looks like. And at that point, I'm going to ask Rob for some input and for some help. So if you look at page 1, we provided a background, provided a link there that CASB has a lot of this information, well, not guideline information, but a lot of the procedures and expectations for board members. So if anyone wants to go to that link, I'm sure a lot of you have been to that and kind of look what CASB has. But we did try to make sure that we captured that without creating a 40-page document. So the best way we could do that. We do have an agreement that basically speaks to this is a guiding document. It does not supersede policy. Policy is policy. There will be some things that we surface that we have to go back and modify our policy, bring it back to the board in a reading, and then eventually we would take that policy and bring it to a second reading for approval. There is one caveat on that first paragraph, board operating procedure agreement. It's the very last line where it talks about once we get to a document that we all agree upon, then the document can be changed. And if we run into another issue, another situation, but it can only be changed with a supermajority of the vote. That's what Northside has. We don't have to leave that, so I just wanted to make a note. That's where we got that language from. What the reason is for a supermajority, I cannot explain that yet, but I can get that information. So I thought that was interesting, so I wanted to leave that piece in there. When we do have either a candidate or a new board member, what we're trying to address in that section of 1 is how do we go about onboarding.
Before you go off that first page, if I can chime in just real quick.
You can chime in anytime, Rob.
So I think it's really, I think that's a really important piece, even though it's just listed as the background and the preference. That first paragraph after board operating procedure agreement, I think is one of the most important things to understand about this. The procedures are an understanding among you all and between you all and the superintendent. These procedures don't supersede your policies, right? So if we have something in here that is not the same as what our policy is, this doesn't matter.
Correct.
Okay, it's wrong and we need to fix it. We're either gonna need to, and Dr. Burstiff made the comment of you're gonna have to fix your policy, which you may choose to do on the backside. But somewhere in time, what happens sometimes is if this doesn't get reviewed enough times, we get differing answers. And this is not policy. This is how I describe board operating procedures are. These are your rules that you all have decided are appropriate for you. These are the details. These are the dirty details of how we as a group expect ourselves to act amongst ourselves. It's not policy. It's not the broad language, and it's kind of like a funnel, right? You have your legal that's really broad, and then your local's a little narrower, and then this is even narrower. This is the expectations you all are setting for yourselves to be controlled. And just the final piece I'll say is to Dr. Burstiff's comment about why does Northside have 5 of 7, a supermajority to change it? The logic behind that is because this is being done in a vacuum, in the sense of we're not doing this because there's a problem. We're doing this because there's not a problem. And we want these rules in place because we're in a spot where we can say, hey, let's make a good set of rules that isn't about gotcha, right? It's not backfighting kind of things. These are our rules. And so why you create a supermajority on something like that is to say, look, we need to really make sure before we change what we said in a happy time, you know, when life is okay, that this is how we want to operate. If we're going to change something like that because we're mad at each other and we're doing 5-4 votes on, or excuse me, 4-3 votes on everything, we don't want to change all these procedures under that. We want it to be, okay, we as a board, we as a super majority of the board have said, okay, that's kind of outdated or antiquated or whatever, so now's the time to go ahead and change that. That's why some boards, and as Dr. Versa said, you don't have to do this, but that's why some boards would put that as a super majority, because we don't want it constantly shifting back and forth and back and forth. So, big picture, I just think all of that is really important for y'all to understand of why are we even talking about this? We have a bunch of board policies. You do. And it goes into a lot of details about a bunch of things on your board policies, but it leaves a bunch of things open. And that's what this document is really meant to do, is to give you all direction in some of the weeds that come up from time to time. Okay, look, what did we decide when we weren't fighting about this issue? What did we decide is the way we as a board think we ought to handle that type of an issue? And that's why the 12 points that are coming up are the relevant 12 points, right? It's the things that become problematic at times for every group of people, and we're trying to set the ground rules not at a time that we're fighting about it.
Right. Thank you. Thank you all. So as we look at the first item, which is candidate new board member orientation, it basically talks a lot about when we have a new board member come on, the training requirements, which are the 10 hours in specific areas. Later on, it's going to talk about experienced board members don't have as many hours, basically 5 that they have to have. But it covers the hours in training, induction of the new board member, how we coordinate that new board member to meet the senior staff of the district, how we coordinate with that board member to sit and have the opportunity to listen to presentations from the divisions in the district and have that opportunity, and that the board president assigns a mentor to any new trustee coming on board to provide them that supporting kind of mechanism that they have around them. So I know that Mr. Carrillo, Mr. Bernal, they've been through that whole process, but we've never had it down in writing anywhere. So it's great to have it down in writing as a guide to us, and then you guys can provide some really good feedback being through there that we may want to add as a group. So that opportunity will come up. And if any of these you guys want to talk about when I get there, just this is a conversation between all of us, so we can have that conversation. It has required board training. This is where item B is for experienced trustees and gives out what those trainings look like. Item A talks about the requirements for a new trustee coming on board and what those requirements have to do and which ones are specific. Just like the orientation Texas Education Code, the issue at TPIA, information, open meetings, and public information training, so that we make sure everyone has their specific training. We also have the document that we're going to attach to this from Region 20 that kind of shows what that looks like. And even when you talk to Region 20, it's very confusing, and it's good to have it written out. But we be prepared in the event it does change with legislation, that we come back and update it in our document. One of the conversations that Dr. Villegas and I had was we really are proud of the norms that we have for the Board of Trustees. I know that following this, and as Dr. Villegas continues to do our training tonight, she's going to talk a lot about norms that we have when we have meetings. Which was a ending piece, and it was reflected also on the document that Esparza Lopez sent me at the end, that the continuation to creating norms.
Lloyd, and I just want to make sure that we all understand that that document was created when President Mike Frazier established a committee that consisted of Flo and Ida and myself, and we worked on it over multiple meetings and had a lot of discussion and wordsmithing and partnership with Holsworth, who we would send the document to. He would return it with suggestions. We would talk about it some more, make changes, and we did do a back and forth that was very collaborative. And at the end, we were satisfied with what we, had come up with, and we wanted to present it to the board. And I think it was presented to the board a couple of times over a span of time, but that we never went back to do the continuation, which was the meeting norms and the board procedures, right? So this was just like the first part of it.
So you're talking about a document focusing on meeting norms?
This is what we
Or
did
this one.
initially. It was
You're
supposed to
talking
be.
about this document?
This was the initial document that happened. We got a
Trustee
training
notes.
on it as well. We had a several-hour training first.
Good.
And then we went to work on this, the three of us. And then, but we were supposed to move on to the next piece, which was the meeting norms.
Good.
But we never came back around to
So
it.
that's some of the work we'll do tonight.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
I just want to make sure we all understand, these are board norms.
Correct.
In other words, how the board functions and works together this way. But the other one will be, how do we work together in a meeting?
Mhm.
When we're taking a meeting, having a meeting, okay?
Yes.
Very good. Item 3 is meetings, which we're gonna spend some time with. I know Dr. Vegas has a lot of things for us to do. The first one under A is patrons addressing the board. And so, we also have the guideline for addressing the board and how we do this work, so it was pretty easy to put in here. But the item 1, 2, 3, 4 underneath B is something that I'm gonna ask Mr. Decker to speak on, because we had a conversation today in reference to what we are doing may not meet the best case scenario, and he has a really great explanation speaking to those comments that we receive on general public comments versus those comments that we receive on a specific posted board agenda item. And so I'd like to ask Rob if he can, because we have in our policy states up to not to surpass 5 minutes. But our practice right now is that we allot 3 minutes to posted agenda items, and then we allot 2 minutes, and I hope I don't have this backwards, we allot 2 minutes for general public comments. And so, can you kind of pick up, Robin, and talk about what we may want to be thinking in this area?
So the reason this got all muddied was 2 legislative sessions ago, the legislature passed the new provisions that dealt with the idea of allowing the public the right to have, at every single meeting that happens, the ability to provide public comments, and of course they use the exact same phrase, we didn't use new words, which would have made life a lot easier, on posted agenda items. Okay, and the rules that exist for that are statutorily defined what they are. So I'm going to put that aside for a minute. School boards have forever had public comment, right? And this is the public comment that is all the public comment you get at your meetings all the time right now. That's 99% of the time that's what's going on. So that public comment has always existed. It is 100% the choice of the board to have that type of public comment, just the generic, come talk to us about whatever you want to talk to us about, public comment, wholly within your control. You do not ever have to do it. Almost every single district, and I will say almost every single district, because I know one that does not, has this general public comment. It's what people are used to, it's what people have done. With that public comment, you can put on all the rules you want to put on, however you want to put it on, because you don't even have to have it. So that's the standard where we have historically said, we're going to allot 30 minutes to public comments. We're only going to allow 3 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever that number is of time for those people. If several people sign up to talk about the same thing, you're all going to have to pick somebody because we're not going to listen to all of you each time. All those rules that we have always had that we've set up, that's the generic public comment. Your policy specifically says, and again, you have the TASB generic policy, and it's BED if anybody cares, but that's the policy. You only have the generic public comment at regular meetings. That's what your policy says. So every single special meeting, anything other than a regular meeting, right? Your regular meeting is only the 3rd Tuesday of the month. That's the only time that your policy says you have this generic public comment that you can have all the rules and control it in the way we've always done it. at every single special meeting, and everything that's not a regular meeting is a special meeting. I don't care if you call it a brown bag, I don't care if you call it a workshop, I don't care what you call it. It doesn't matter in my world, in the legal world. It's not a regular meeting, it's a special meeting. Your policy, which is the standard policy, says no general public comment. So we're done with that. But now we have this new, I'll call it agenda public comment, because I want to call it something different because I can't stand using the same word for the same thing. So agenda public comment, you must allow at every single meeting. So the public has the right to sign up and speak on any and every single agenda item that you have posted for a meeting. You cannot put the same structures on what can happen on that. All you can do on that public comment is define the amount of time they're gonna get. You cannot define a total amount of time, and you cannot define that people have to talk together. You can't do all those things that we do in the general public comment. So, if you have an agenda item, and you have 50 people who come to sign up for an agenda item, guess how many people are gonna have the right to talk on that agenda item? 50. So what we generally advise to people who ask us our opinion is, on that public comment, on agenda public comment, you're gonna wanna be pretty streamlining of that, right? It's gonna be 1 minute. Everybody gets a minute, because otherwise you're gonna lose your meeting. And it is your meeting. It is not the public's meeting. It is the public's invited to your meeting where you need to get school district business done. That's why we don't want people, coming in and taking over our meeting by doing that, so we can't get anything done. You cannot combine people because the law does not allow it. The law is a little vague, but we have one attorney general opinion on it who's given us at least what little bit of angling we understand. They had said that we can put any time limits we want, and we can put time limits on a person to only be allowed whatever it is, like 20 minutes in a meeting when they can provide agenda public comments. So if you had 50 agenda items, you could preclude somebody from talking for 1 minute on all 50 items by saying, look, you have 20 minutes, you can figure out which of the 20 items you want to speak to. The Attorney General said we can do that. Nobody's challenged any of these things, it's just the one rule we have. I'm not gonna recommend, because this is the same policy everybody has, I'm not recommending you change the policy because it covers what you need, it just doesn't get into anywhere near the specificity I'm talking to you all about tonight. But what I'm recommending is a rehash of all of this section, and we just didn't have time to do it, and you all have to agree if you want to, of here's our rules regarding general public comment, which is going to be, everybody gets 3 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever those are, whatever y'all have decide you want it to be in the way you've always done it. And we have to make sure it matches with the language, because the language in your BED is in fact talking about the general public comment. Again, you have to be an attorney to really dig through and get to that, but that's what it's talking about. So we'll match those two words, those two times together. And then we're gonna have a whole separate section in your board operating procedures of, okay, this is what our rules are going to be for the public in regards to agenda comment items. So that you have a much clearer understanding internally, and then we push that out to the public. The reality is nobody signs up as an agenda item. That just doesn't happen before. That just didn't grab a foothold. In 99% of the communities it hasn't. But in those that it does, when you have that person who understands this and figures it out, it can make your life really stinking difficult to try to get through what you need to get through. So that's why, again, as I said on the front side, we're wanting to have this conversation when we're not having these fights. And that's why I recommend you can put it in your board operating procedures. It's not going to violate what you have in the local. People aren't going to totally understand it, but I'm going to tell you as your legal counsel, it's okay to do what I'm suggesting to do. Because it doesn't say what they think it says. It doesn't say it very well, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise, but it's not, right, like the very beginning thing, it can't be different. It has to mesh at some level, and it would still mesh. So that's just a nuance again. Most board members don't understand that, frankly, and that's not a criticism of you all at all. I could have this conversation with probably every single client, and I've had it with most of my clients. Because that just came in and there wasn't a lot of understanding and a lot of explanation as to how it's going to work. I mean, it just got through the legislature somehow or another, and it just got pushed into every single governmental entity. It didn't start here. It was a city thing. Somebody somewhere got mad about something in the city, and it got pushed through, but they made it to every single governmental entity.
That was a session before this most
Yes,
recent session.
correct. It was 2 sessions ago, or maybe 3. I'm
So
getting
if
old.
we have 10 agenda items, I can sign up as a community member to speak on all 10 at the beginning, just like I normally would?
No,
Or is it?
you would control that too.
Okay.
That could be. You all could say you're gonna have it all on the front side. The law requires that they have the right to speak prior to the board's consideration of the item.
So then I would get up 10 times and speak for
Yep.
1 minute.
Yep. Right before the agenda item. And again, it has to be on whatever the next called agenda item is, right? And that's why you have it at that point in time, because it's like, okay, now we're gonna talk about the dress code.
Yeah.
Right, a popular one that everybody wants to talk about in a minute, I'm gonna get you there, but, right, so a minute on the dress code, and now we're gonna talk about the extracurricular code, okay, so now you get a minute on that one before the board does anything. The other piece that's different, real quick, and then, because it's an agenda item, while the general rule on public comment is for y'all what? Do you all respond to anybody who says anything
No.
to
We
you in
don't
public
respond.
comment? You absolutely do not. Why? Because it's not on the agenda 99% of the time, and it would violate the Texas Open Meetings Act. Your attorneys and TASB and everybody's beating that into your head. Well, guess what? There's a different rule. Because they're speaking on an agenda item, and you're about to speak on an agenda item, so guess what? You can talk all day long to those people who are writing about a specific agenda item. So to share it to you in a very practical sense, just that's been come up of recent, you have probably seen the news recently where in public meetings there's a whole lot of dialogue going on between boards and the public, and well, how is that happening? We don't ever do that. How are we doing that? It's happening because those public entities are posting an agenda item to do that.
But they
It's not
still-
public comment, even though we're saying, even though it's being presented in the news media and that it's public comment, it's not. It's an agenda item.
Right.
Just like when you do your budget, you know, you have to have the public input, and I know y'all get so much input on your budget, right? The public
Right.
comes out in droves on you. Technically, they could, right? And so this is that, and so I just, because it's a real world example y'all are seeing right now, I just want to explain what that difference is.
Are we obligated to respond, or can we
Nope,
choose not to?
absolutely not. You're
No.
absolutely
And,
never obligated to
Okay.
respond.
Is that limited to the minute also, or they get to speak for a minute and then they can be engaged for another half hour?
And that's where life gets.
But do we make that?
Yes, it's your
determination?
rules.
Okay.
It's your rules. And that's the danger in engaging in the comment
Yeah,
is that you
it's-
lose control of what's going on. I would never advocate to that.
Yeah.
Just because of that reason, I think it gets a little out of control. But it is a different set of rules because it's an agenda item. You can actually speak to that.
And can we put a guideline that only the president responds?
Sure. Again, your rules. Then that's a lot to think about what you're gonna be talking about is how are you gonna handle those things in a meeting.
Response to the public, you mean?
Yes.
To the individual, I think.
To
is
the
even
individual.
your
Which
side.
is the public.
So we don't.
So the public can come and sign
Hmm.
to speak, and if there's 10 people, they can choose to either speak a minute each or give that minute to their,
And that's
person that is-
that's another choice you can say. I tell every single board, I would never agree to allow people to give their minute to somebody else on the agenda item one. Now, again, if you on the general public comment, you wanna do that, cause we combine stuff and we don't care cause it's 30 minutes one way or the other.
Okay.
I mean, we care, but we don't care, cause we know it's 30 minutes one way or the other. My answer is, look, if you're signing up for the singular agenda item, it is your minute, sir or madam. It is not
Okay.
your minute to transfer to somebody else. Again,
Okay.
our rules, and our rule is gonna say, you don't transfer it.
so just because someone is speaking for a group doesn't mean we give them all the
Correct.
group's minutes?
I wouldn't,
Okay.
but again,
You can.
100% your choice.
I think the city does. The city allows you to do that. That you can
Yeah.
give your
You get
time.
one
Yeah, I think
You
it-
can
up-
see
up
your
to
time. General
30
public-
minutes, I think it is.
In the general public public comment, different answer, right?
Or I don't,
Exactly,
a specific
exactly.
agenda item is what I saw on
Honest-
TV the other
Is
day.
it? And I
It
don't
was
know,
on a
I'm not
specific-
dismissing what you're saying, I don't
Yeah,
know
but
that.
there's all these nuances, right?
And it is 100% your call. It's your decision, whatever is functional for you all as a board.
So like public comment is gonna be done for just being public for say nothing on the agenda.
Right.
versus an agenda item, if they come in here, oh, I'm speaking on agenda item, it's 1 minute. Is it at the time when the agenda item is being brought up? Or is that up to us?
That's y'all's call. I
That's what he
generally,
just said.
Oh,
He
okay.
just said,
And-
it's up to us.
We
And it's not a
front-load our
minute right
curriculum.
now, it's 4 minutes, isn't it? Or
Well,
3 minutes?
currently we're doing 3 minutes, but we're not calling it public versus agenda.
No, we're
We're just allowing.
Because nobody signed it.
Actually,
We are.
we're calling
When you
it
sign up.
agenda items only, right? We're really not leaving
No,
for
we've
public.
changed our form, they signed up, they actually have to
Because I
sign
know
up.
for the longest time we were doing agenda items only, and that was wrong. Because they can speak to the, you know.
it's not wrong. I mean, you
Well-
can do that. Your policy currently says that you have public comment at your regular meetings, general, like generic, again, the public comment,
Yeah, it
I'm gonna
doesn't
start
say
throwing out
agenda.
air quotes
But
here.
what we're always saying.
What
agenda.
we've always done in the history, but again, there's a lot of districts, and y'all probably are as bad as many of them, that slips into the agenda on those special meetings all the time
Yeah,
too.
because I'm
It's
asking-
not supposed to.
Okay, well, my next question would be on the special meetings. Special meetings meaning that we have something to vote on.
Special
And-
meeting means it's not a regular meeting.
Like
But
a
we'll
brown
usually-
bag is a.
But usually we vote, if we vote on something, would it be a regular meeting, or, because that's
No.
the,
Your regular meeting is specifically defined as your one meeting once a month on the third Tuesday. Is that
Yes.
right? Third Tuesday. That is your singular. You have one regular meeting every month because you're required to have a meeting every month, even though you don't. I mean, some people take Christmas or anyway. You're required to have one regular meeting a month. Any other meeting you have, I don't care what you call it. I don't care when it is. I don't care what you're doing at it. It's a special meeting because it's not the regular meeting, right? It's a weird way to define it.
Yeah.
Special is anything other than the one
Outside the
regular meeting.
Right.
Yeah.
The third.
and so we can say that they don't have to come speak at that one.
They
We
can.
could say, no, you're not allowed to speak. That's the rule.
They
of
have the right to speak to the agenda items on the special meeting. They
Oh,
do not have the right to
do
speak
Public comment.
about whatever I want to talk about.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
If the items are
Okay.
all information.
I got it. I was like, confusing there.
That's an open question.
If it's informational.
There's a question, we don't have the answer, right? If it's an informational thing, I will tell you that our conservative answer, and I think it's ultimately gonna be the answer, if you are having any debate about anything, the whole point of this is for the public to have the right to share their opinion about it, whether you're voting about it or not. I mean, we've even gotten to the point of, do people get the right to request to speak to saying the Pledge of Allegiance? That's a question. I
So
mean, that's a
anybody
le-
can come and talk about all those special meetings we have, like, all the testing stuff that we
Yeah.
host,
Yes, they
the
can- they're
hearings
invited.
or whatever. Is the hearings included? If it's a
Any
special
meeting is a meeting. If it's a
Mhm.
posted meeting, it's a meeting.
But we're supposed to want public input, all these things. We're supposed to want, feedback.
Well, I mean, we don't care, but if they wanna come, and sometimes.
Yeah, they don't.
sometimes
I mean, we don't, they
come, but
don't
yeah.
come.
Nobody
Yeah,
comes.
They don't. Again, this is not, it's not gonna happen a lot. I'm just trying to make sure you
That's
really
just-
understand what the
right,
rules
right,
are.
right.
Yeah. So that whole section of B.
That's a lot of
B
noise
and
there.
C, yeah, we want to rework with Mr. Decker and bring that back to maybe a working committee, however we end this. I know we want to get through here and give it
Yes.
Dr. Villegas her opportunity to take us through really great work that she's prepared. So I hear, we're gonna get with Robert and kind of rework this whole document and bring it back, so is that
Well, I don't
okay?
think,
That
I
section
don't
of the
think a
document.
committee, I think we should all be involved in it, cause
Okay.
just one committee, it could be 3 people that think all the same.
Very good.
Maybe you could do
Versus-
that
That's true,
during one of your brown bags.
yes.
Yeah.
You're right.
And you're gonna put in here like the nuance that Robert talked about
Yes.
with regard to public and agenda item and all that.
That's what needs to change.
We're gonna-
That's what I wanna
Yes.
change in the way this is
Yeah,
currently.
we need
I
to.
think we wanted to
Yeah,
split them
and I
up.
think
After
you
speak
could
to
do
general
that
public,
and just
then
leave
we'll
a
speak
blank
specifically to
for the
public.
minutes.
But I don't think,
Yeah,
are we
there will
gonna,
be
are we
pieces
gonna
you
leave
And
it
then
at
we
5
decide
minutes
on
or that's
one
fine?
or three, you know.
Right.
And who responds? We don't
It
want
says 5
seven
minutes
people
or
having a
as the board
conversation.
president deems, so in our practice, it's 3 to 2 right now. But I really want to lean to the 1 minute, because I thought we had the same guidelines around
Right.
general public comments, but I'm learning we do not.
Yeah.
Anybody
Doesn't
wants
have
to
to be-
speak, you can't put a time limit on it, so.
Good
So let me
learning.
ask you another question, due to the fact that, say if my president was the only one to respond on that situation, like say someone comes with public comment, and it's on an agenda item, and then the agenda item is, he's the only one that's allowed to respond, but yet, would it limit our freedom of speech.
No, you would still have the right to discuss it as the agenda
When we go to
item.
discussion.
You can say whatever you wanna say, just when it's your.
When it's on the, when it's.
When it's-
Yeah, when he calls for discussion on the
Oh,
item.
okay.
We're talking about interacting.
Right.
with the
Yeah,
person
okay.
that's Speaking.
I understand now. I just, it was.
And in truth, it just, that's, in my opinion, that's a cleaner way to engage with the public. Now, on the backside, if one of the board members wants to, in your time, share your feelings about something they said, I think that stops that member of the public from wanting to continue to engage you, right? Because we've cut it off for an
Yeah, I
inappropriate
understand.
amount
Or
of
at
time.
times, it's the opposite. Also, it can be the opposite as well. Someone can want to continue engaging, you know, and back and forth.
Right.
So it could be never ending as well.
I understand.
So moving on, that covers B and C together, bring that back. Item D, under the meetings category, basically we talked about Robert's Rules of Orders, newly revised vision is the document requirements, which we do a really great job of doing. It's about our discussions stay on what we are deliberating at that moment and specific about the agenda item that we stay on task. There are some limitations that the board president can put on mine posted items here. What am I doing?
Page 4.
Aside from limitations, the board president shall not interfere with debate. So as long as conversations are happening, the president can give a time limit to an agenda item, and once that time limit's exhausted, I know that's in here somewhere, we'll get to it in a few minutes. Item E, placing agenda items on a posted board meeting agenda. It is the whole process of if a trustee wants an agenda item, we're putting some parameters to that we have to know before the fourth working day before a regular meeting, to post on a regular meeting, or if it's a special meeting such as a brown bag on the first Tuesday, the fourth working day before that, to give us some time to put that in there. That basically goes to a agenda item that we look at, and then I meet with the board president where we go through them to finalize the agenda item. Now, a board president can push off an agenda item to a later time, as long as he identifies that time, but cannot remove that item. And so I know that's been a question that I've had to field in the past, and so I wanted to make sure it's part of our guidelines. We have a preliminary agenda, to which anybody can put agenda items on there. Then we meet prior to posting, and then we finalize the official agenda item. If there's an item the board president moves, he can say, well, we're not gonna hear that item, that agenda item at this meeting. I'm gonna move it to the next month meeting. And so as long as we follow that process, then that meets what we have in our policy and supports everyone trying to put agenda items on the board agenda. Discussion of motions as we move to item F.
Can I get a little bit more clarification, just
Yes.
real quick before you go on ahead? So it says here for deliberation at an appropriate time in the near future. Is that the next meeting or multiple meetings, or is there a specific?
Let me respond.
Sure.
And Yolanda, look, for example, what you had asked, as you saw it at this workshop, there was no room for it. We even had to take one of the three items out. Okay?
At this
And
workshop?
there's certain things that really have to be discussed because of timing,
Sure.
budget, what we went over at this past workshop. I told Lloyd, I have not looked at September yet, but my idea was
Yeah, he
we're
said-
gonna look at September.
Right.
Okay, and hopefully it's there. But as you see, we already have one item that's been pushed. But
Right.
we're gonna try and get that one item Tuesday, which I think we will. So it's, again, and I wanna be, explicit on what's just been said. I cannot prevent any item from being on the board, and I always thought it took two board members, but it doesn't. If you read it, it's one board member,
Yeah.
okay? And again, I was going on generic board policies that I've seen primarily with
Previous.
TASB, okay? I recommended. But I need to make sure that business that needs to be taken care of in a timely manner, okay? And that's what I did. Okay, so yes, technically, I could say, look, there's no room for it till February,
Right.
okay? But personally, that's not the way I'm gonna operate or have operated. And like I told him, and he
you know
told
what,
you
Sylvester,
September.
just that communication would be
Yeah,
great, because
you
I
know,
don't know. All I
yeah,
know is that it's
yeah,
not getting on, and
yeah.
then, last time it was 1 month, 2 months, and then I'm
Yeah.
trying to avoid
And that's
a
all it
last
is.
minute
Now-
thing.
And I'll be honest with you,
So.
on
he
the
told-
agenda, we work on it,
Yeah.
one day. Again, I know, I understand there's 30 days to a month, but
Mhm.
as you know, I still have to put food on the
I
table.
understand.
And I got grandkids, I mean, I
Me
could go
too.
on,
Yes, we do.
health.
We all
you know,
do, yeah.
I can go on and on.
Sure.
But I don't treat any agenda request any different at any time.
I mean, for me, it's
I
just the
wanna- and
reassurance
I
that
think
it's not gonna
good
be 6 months
that
out,
I'm saying
it's
that
gonna
out in
be-
the open right now.
Right, absolutely.
And
And
then-
it's
and-
just knowing that for you, it's not gonna be like, oh, we're gonna wait 4 months. That you're really just saying one or two
No,
meetings at
no,
the
no,
most.
no. Yeah, at the
The
most.
policy is a little ambiguous. It doesn't say the next meeting.
Yeah,
It
that's
says-
why I was
Yeah.
asking,
Yeah.
because I've never had this communication with Sylvester, because usually I request it through you, you request it
And-
through
and
him,
if-
to him,
and-
and then he comes back to you,
Yeah.
and then you
And
say, well, not till
usually,
September.
if there's room, we've put it on right away,
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
And just so everybody is clear, again, I don't dogfight it at all. BE local it specifically says the exact same thing as that you have here in your, in these procedures. And what I really wanted to point out is your BE local is a -A, and you all may remember from the last time I did training a long time ago out here, A means it's a generic TASB policy, i.e. if you would go look, you're gonna see this exact same language in a whole lot of districts. If you ever see an X, that's where it's, okay, we've done something unique in our policy. So I just to point out to you that that is the standard language that TASB has pushed out.
Right. It was a good clarification, thank you.
So discussion of motion, and I think this is where Dr. Villegas, a lot of her work is gonna have to do, and it basically just talks about, keep direct solely to the business that's currently under deliberation, that the board members are recognized by the president, Robert's rules of orders, that members, are able to speak, every member is able to speak, give their opinion, then if there's time allotted, the board president can go back to the original, give them more time, speak on the item. The courteous to each other when we're speaking, and that we all would agree to refrain from making statements to one another, including citizens to be heard, and that we keep it about the agenda only, to remove that whole, not getting personal, but we're keeping it about what we're deliberating about. It goes on further to take, number 7, once a vote is taken by the board, each decision is in action by the whole and binding upon each member. It should be supported by each member.
Where is that? Lloyd,
Item
I'm sorry.
number 7, page 5 at the top. The other, right above it, number 6, that trustees should not be requested by the superintendent or member of staff to vote on the item. Basically, there should be no conversation between the superintendent or any member about a pending agenda item or which way you want to vote. It says, except in cases of emergency. What comes to mind to me is a catastrophic natural issue going on, and we need to get some things moving.
What page are you on, Lloyd? I'm sorry.
Page 5.
5,
Okay.
6, and 7 at the top.
Moving to communication. And I won't touch on every one of these because I know Dr. Villegas is giving
Is she
some
going to
7
review these individually?
No.
Oh.
No, this is draft, we're gonna work from here. So this
Okay.
is, what we're doing is opening up the door today, but giving everyone time to process. There's no way I'm gonna ask.
So we're not gonna have this discussion right now, you're just reviewing it with us.
I'm reviewing it, and if there's some highlights that you guys want.
We come back
look
to you
at,
with that, or are we
Yeah.
gonna discuss it together again?
Yeah, we're gonna
I'll
meet
state
again
that.
together.
Okay.
And-
We can keep this
so-
document.
Yes,
You can
and
take
we
this
can
home
look at
and-
it, okay,
My
good.
suggestion again would be highlight things that you have questions about.
Sure.
When you have the brown bag lunch,
Mhm.
make that a work session for you guys to talk about which of these need more clarification, which needs to be change because
Sure.
you have a different culture here than in other systems for different reasons, okay?
With the time that I have remaining, I'm not even gonna read through communications, but I would ask everyone to read through them. I know there's gonna be some for additional conversation, specifically items F and G. I think we need to open up and have time to have those conversations about, because it talks about social media, how we use social media, if we use social media, about a disclaimer that we put on there, because it's really easy for folks to attribute a social media posting that's the voice of the board. So maybe a disclaimer says, I am posting in my individual capacity, not representing the board of the district. So there's some safeguard mechanisms that Northside has used, and I thought they were really good. Doesn't mean we have to do them, but I put them in this document because I think they are talking pieces that we should look at and that we should make some conversations about. And so we don't have time today, but I would ask every one of you to look through there and make your notes as we come back to this. We can take each one of these categories and do them individually over time as well, so that we all find a place we can land on. And that goes all the way through L, and there's so many of them, by the time I finish, I'll be out of time. School
That's a good
visits.
start. Sure.
School visits is another one, that, it talks about, the expectation is to, allow the superintendent to know, that's a school visit, that we check in with the principals, that, outside, trustees, and this is another thing that Rob and I talked about, we kind of interchange between member and trustee, and there's some fixes we need to do in definitely wordsmithing there. But in the capacity of a trustee, that a trustee has access to all district facilities and to campuses. Outside that capacity, and unless you're there as a parent, guardian, grandparent, it's basically you have the same rights as the general public, which you all already know. Complaints, item 6.
Real quick, just on that, the knowing beforehand doesn't mean just showing up and saying, can I talk to the principal now, can I walk in, right? It's actually calling a day, 2, 3 before, setting up something that you can come in.
Yeah, it's not even day before. It's just
Or
courtesy,
just-
because the last thing I think a superintendent, and right, you're gonna have another superintendent in the future. The last thing we want to hear from, like a principal is, oh, I did a walkthrough with trustee X, and it's like we had no knowledge that they're going in. And then it looks like that we have this communication, broken link between the central office and our trustees that are doing visits, and we don't have that knowledge. So it's about just that courtesy of having that knowledge, that we can make sure that we're telling the principal, you're gonna get a visit, here it's gonna be, this is what the trustee would like to see, in their capacity.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be formal, like days before, so just a simple call.
Yeah,
to Mona.
just doing, like, just showing up to the office and
Call
telling the
Mona.
principal, I wanna go walk through.
Correct.
A little heads
Call
up.
Mona.
and then-
Now, when
That
you
way they
go
know.
and
What does that
visit, it's,
No,
like-
no, I
I
know, I'm
mean,
just
I always
saying
call you
in
when I'm
general.
gonna go visit.
Because
right?
when,
You do.
just real quick, at the conference,
Yeah.
there was some districts that made changes to their policy where a board member could walk through at any time.
Yes.
But,
On their own, on their own?
but this was actually, before the Uvalde stuff. That brings the question, who's in your school
Security.
without knowing if board members or somebody's just walking
Really,
to school.
I've never
Who's
heard
to know
of
these
it.
people in there? And,
Or
well, this was the not the
training?
local one, the national one. So this was some other states also,
Oh,
the
I
people
was
that
gonna say,
do this stuff.
there's
So-
That state level,
But-
it's not like that.
Yeah.
But there was a couple of up north Texas districts that
Mhm.
they had this, and I was like, why would you allow that? Because then not everybody knows exactly who we are in a district. We have new teachers or whatever. So who's this random person just walking in the hallways? So,
But we have our tags too.
Yeah.
Well, we always
Well-
have to have our IDs in the event we had to do something like that.
but
Yeah.
I was just saying that as a general. That way the principal knows.
That's a good point. And that's what I mean about having a conversation, because there's things that you may have information that Sylvester may not, I may not, but bringing it up, and we can do the legwork, then as we meet again, come back and talk about it. This thing will not be in approval format tonight,
Oh,
or
yeah.
next week, or the week after. But it's about us starting it, open the door, let's have a conversation. and then give me some direction about how you want to go forward. Bring it back to the brown bag, the next brown bag. We want these categories to come back to the brown bag. We'd like you to go get information on X, Y, and Z, so that we can do that. But it's a great.
I just have a question on appropriate conversations when you go into the school. Like a board member going into the school, do you sit down with the principal and say, I don't like how you're doing this? Or are you there just to see how things, I mean, we're not there to give suggestions on how to run the school. We're not there to hear how such and such isn't doing a good job. Are we just, I'm just wondering why in the first place we'd be visiting all the schools, other than going to like a program or introducing ourselves. I think we need to put in there very specific guidelines on why in the first place you're going to the school.
Yeah.
Like, are you going because people are complaining about the school and you want to go see what's going on here?
Yeah.
Or because, in my opinion, that's not appropriate for us to act as a board member. Now, if I have a child at that school and something's going on, then I think we have all the right in the world to go ask the principal.
I don't want
But then you're going as a
micromanage
parent,
like
not
that.
as a board member.
That's a
No,
lot of
I-
micromanaging. I think we should,
Of
we
course,
just all have
it's
sense.
micromanaging, but
Yeah.
I'm just saying, sometimes you have to be specific as to what we can and can't do when we go into the school.
So there is a stark difference between governance and management of a district. And I mean, yeah, I think you're 100% correct. What the objective is to maybe go look at an initiative that's happening. I want to see it in action. I want to gather information. I want to bring that information back. But because it also talks about when we do these things as a best practice, we should come back and share them with all the other trustees at the next board meeting. When we get to the closing, how we always make a comment about something going on big, that would be a perfect opportunity, or we can build it into our meetings, that board members who've been on the visit can provide some feedback to the rest of the board. But we'll definitely work on that. I know it's in here where it specifically talks about a trustee should not do a visit in a administrative capacity. That is in a board member capacity, which is a higher governance.
Well, and for us, it's about, we get invited to go read a story, read a,
Exactly.
go watch the kids dance or act or stuff like that. I
And
mean,
if
that's
there's
But as a board
typically.
member, we can't go check with the principal, hey, I wanna check out teacher so-and-so, I wanna go with you
No
right now
one
and
does
look at it.
that. We don't do that.
No.
Well, don't say we don't, so.
And if there's
I
ever an
think different.
initiative, you usually invite us or say, hey,
Yeah.
you know, if anybody wants to go, let me know, and, or we set a date or
I
something.
know, and some people say nobody can do it, but then they do it themselves, so.
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay.
But there is a process. I mean, I'm sure your community sometimes brings issues to you about
Yeah,
a teacher or something.
Yeah, but we don't
at school
address
or
those.
something.
right.
But there is a process
Correct.
going through the superintendent's
Mhm.
office.
You cannot address that.
And
with
it's
the
not
principal.
your role to be the
Yes,
administrator in
that's
charge.
understood.
You know, you can bring the issue and the superintendent or his or her senior staff will need to address it.
I'm bringing it up because if this is gonna be a permanent, well, it's gonna be a living document, right? But if you get new board members, they don't even have a clue how to be a board member when they become a board member. So if it's written in there what you should and shouldn't do when you visit schools, helps everybody.
Yeah, black and white.
Yeah.
Now, do new board members, do they get assigned a mentor around the board or
I
something?
think it kind of naturally happens,
It's in here.
but we haven't.
I just saw
It's
that.
in here.
Yeah,
I
it is.
just
I
saw
saw that
it.
it's in there.
this document.
But we don't
It's
have
new
a-
to us, yes.
Because I'd
I
highly
know Juan
recommend
just
that, because you're
Put his
right.
arm around me.
I've served on boards and unless I had had a mentor, I wouldn't, I don't know what the processes are, et cetera.
Yeah.
So it's always good to have.
You know, but the thing that I want to say is that a document is only worthwhile if everybody does it.
Yes.
If some people do it and some people don't, then it undermines the credibility of the document. So you
That's
can't,
why it's a
you
document.
can't be wanting to put all these rules and regulations and things on people. Say, this is what you need to do. Because when I was a board member, everybody told me what I needed to do. And what I figured out over time was that not everybody did it. And it was the rules or the policies only applied to some.
And that's
So
why
the
you have
issue
to
is that
remind each
everybody
other.
has to be cognizant, and it can't be okay for some, not for others, right? And especially with new board members, we have to set the example, right?
And just to be plain, but I always go after school, like after business hours. I try not to go if I get an invite, I go during the time when it's in the invite, saying they're having a play during the time. And usually it's even before school, because it says, like, there is a local policy saying that we're not supposed to be implementing ourselves during business hours. So it's usually after 4 o'clock or whenever school lets out, or before school lets in. Sometimes I'm up there just opening doors for kids to get off and, hey, how's it going? Here's walking the kids into class, like just letting them walk in, and then it's the end of the day. That's the beginning, and then that's it. Like, and then I leave. So it's not like, it's just to show face in our community. We're supposed to be advocates in our community, conduit. And that's the way I perceive it. So I try not to go during class hours. So I mean, it's
a learning curve.
So I mean, that's where I'm at. It's always after school and before school. So, and most of the time, and then if it is during, I usually let Lloyd know, hey, Lloyd, I want to go here. Is it okay? And I always ask him if it's okay. And he says, yeah, he usually gets involved. He lets Simona know. So I mean, that's the process that I've been through. And that's what I've been
But he
told.
goes to a lot of events.
Well, I mean, all of you guys, I mean, these are your kids, so going to the event is not it's how you behave in that event that's important to how you're perceived as a board member or a board.
There are some
So-
events we don't need to be at because it makes people uncomfortable, you know. Like if they're having something, maybe the instructors feel uneasy, well, you know, because there's a board member here, you know.
I promise you, a board member's presence does change environment. It really does, and positively,
Regardless.
and also challenging in some regards. So, I mean, we just all need to be cognizant, have that conversation to get through it. Item 6, complaints. Basically, you guys get a lot of people who want to stop you and tell you of a concern. It's just how do we direct them to the student parent handbook, or how do we direct them to the superintendent's office if it's a sensitive, or what we do. And so that's in there. We had that conversation. I don't know, I'm going beyond my time. I'm trying to get there. Item 7, confidentiality of materials. Item 8, board travel. Item 9, creation of a board activity calendar specific to trustees. Item 10, board officers and their terms. I think it's item C, that's not reflected in our policy, but I saw it in the guideline, thought it was worthy of keeping in here, so we can have a conversation about that, which is, to run for board president, you have to have at least been on the board for 1 year, which to me makes a lot of sense, maybe even more, but. Item 11, electioneering, which specifically comes directly from policy, may not use state or local funds or resources of the district for electioneering for or against a candidate, measure, or a political party. So has a definition of what resources look like. Item 12 are the action committees, and we have several action committees in our district. It talks about them. Those are at the appointment of the president. The function of the committee should be fact-finding, deliberative, and advisory, but not administrative. I think that's what I was referring to earlier when, Ida, you gave that example. And the special committees are resolved upon completion of assigned tasks, which ours are standing, and we don't do that, but it's in our policy. And the superintendent, board president are ex officio members of all board committees. Let's change through board action. So I know that's reflected in our policy. So my goal is to open up that door today to.
Real quick, do you post those? Do you post your committees?
We do not post them, but we do not have a quorum on
And
any of
that's,
them.
okay, that's, I wanted to know that.
We are very
'cause
careful.
I will be adding something to that then for that.
We're very careful.
Because I'm
not to
thinking if
say
we
it's
have
never happened
3-member
before.
board, let's say these 3 are on one committee and I'm still a member ex officio, just being there would give us a quorum.
Right,
So-
which is, yeah, so that I'm just gonna have
And,
another
and
board
I know
member.
that, but, you know, next year's board president may not know that, or.
Yeah, we may want to do something policy
So,
here.
yeah, we need to put
or
something,
change that.
yeah.
No, just an added bullet that just says if you're not part of the committee, it's important you don't attend, or you're wanting to attend, you need to give advance notice so the meeting can be posted.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you end up not being able to have the meeting, or you have to have somebody leave, and that just gets uncomfortable in a hurry.
Yes, thank you.
So, we can bring this back to a brown bag and use a whole brown bag for it. We can bring it back to a series of brown bag. So right now it's in our process. I don't want to take Dr. Vega's time, but I wanted to open up the door and then I will get direction from Sylvester.
Yeah, could I make a suggestion that we all take this with us? Make your own comments on your own items, okay? Get that back to Lloyd. And hopefully with each one of our comments, he can put something together where I'm not necessarily a change, but maybe something in parentheses, this was suggested, and then we can discuss it as a group, each suggestion, okay?
Yep.
That way
Sounds
we
good.
don't have to be making 20 suggestions at our next group meeting. And we'll
Makes
get
you
this
have
back
couple
to
of
us,
sections, yeah.
we'll get this back to us, which, with parentheses at each item, that way you have a day or two to study before we get together again.
Okay.
And, you know, we can take it from there, okay? That way we
Sounds good.
don't cause,
Just give us a heads up.
because we
what
could
meeting
easily
will be,
make this
so we
a
can-
4 or 5 hour meeting,
And then if you don't get your suggestions to Lloyd, then you can't make it.
yeah.
Because then
No, but if
that
there's- yeah, that
defeats
section
the
that-
purpose.
Well, if you don't turn them in and you want something, hey,
Yeah.
it's your luck.
If there's a section with no changes.
And,
on it,
and just
then
keep
I'll
in
talk
mind
about
that this
it
is,
from having to go.
like we said, it could be for us, you know, hopefully in a couple of years, it's not for me anymore, but I keep saying that. You know, so it's for, it's,
Future.
you know, for future members.
It's forever.
So,
I would
Until it
recommend
gets
that we do not-
revised.
I recommend we don't even think about us. We think about, we're putting a document together for a
For the
future,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
board
there you go.
that will apply to us and that will operate by, we'll
Right.
provide examples of.
Yes.
Rob, I know you have to leave. Is there anything that you wanted to add to any of the comments?
No, I mean, again, it just, these are your rules that you're holding yourselves accountable to. And I know you just made the comment of it's for future things, and I think that's true, but it
Yeah.
is still,
Starts
these are
to-
your rules. These are what you are all agreeing amongst yourself are, these are the rules that we all think we ought to hold ourselves accountable to your comments earlier, right? I mean, if there's unwritten rules, then yeah, well, you should do that, and you should do that, well, you're not, okay. The whole point of this is, we're not gonna have that, there's still, that's always gonna happen, you know, something weird comes up all the time. But the whole point of this is to give you all some parameters and some more details and some more meat to be able to say, you know, think about this. The other thing, just in y'all's world, if you're looking at it, lots of districts have these. Go look at, I would suggest bigger districts, right? Because they got more people and more time to deal with those things. But I mean, go look in some in North Texas, go look in some in the Houston area, and go see what kind of extra things they have in there. I mean, why create the wheel from nothing,
Yeah.
right? I mean, this isn't rocket
makes
science
sense.
and any all of those things. So there's lots of them out there. Some of them are extremely detailed, and some are broader, you know, like this is, and some are in the middle somewhere. So
I kind of like the conversation of this is
Yeah.
good, because, you know, you're able to grasp them, you know, instead of something like this.
Yeah.
and you-
And if it gets too detailed, the problem is then every time something changes, you're having to go back and need to change that, and then it becomes cumbersome the other
Yeah.
way.
And it's pretty well written, we just kinda need to
It's a
tweak
broad framework.
for this Southwest ISD.
Yeah, and there may be some things we left off that you guys may be thinking about.
Wanna
that I
add?
wanna know, yeah. And then, obviously, it's gonna have to be approved by the board, so we're all agreed to it. Dr. Bates, can we take 5 and come back at 7:15?
Yeah, let me just
Turn
ask
it
a
all over
question
to you.
before we take 5. I think we all need a potty break. But, just for my own clarification, are we saying that these norms are how we're expected to work together in order to carry out these rules effectively, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And again,
So one of the other things I'd like to recommend, again, as part of the work you're gonna do, you know, during either your board, either through your work sessions, the brown bag, or other training sessions, this is really important, because this is really what creates a board to function well. Understanding, and I agree with Yolanda's statement, is once this is done, whether it's a 4-3, 5-7, 6-1, whatever, the majority has to, you know, because there's gonna be other board members coming in later, you know, we're all gonna go on our happy ways someday or another. And so you want this district to be really grounded on some really solid, good stuff that's important. I really like these norms, but I think you need to revisit and say, are we doing this in order to carry this out effectively when you go to do this?
Yeah, one thing we talked about is that we don't have like a self-evaluation
Yeah.
or a board within
Right.
us evaluation.
my
And we
first
talked
note.
about kind of establishing something like that, so that would be
That's my
really
first note.
beneficial.
Well, that's in the review we're gonna do, so let's take a potty break and then we'll come back.
7:50?
We'll cover as much as we
Well,
can.
you got 15 minutes.
Thank y'all.
Thank
Thank
you.
you all.
Thanks, all.
Thank you, Rob.
Are you gonna have enough time, Dr. Villegas?
Well, if not,
Come-
we'll hurry it up.
We're here till
I'll
9
come
now.
back, I'll
Yeah,
come
I
back
was gonna
and
say.
be with you
till
again.
9?
The only
No,
time I get to
8:30.
see you.
5 to 9,
I think you said 8:30.
Take it easy.
It was 5:30
If
to
you go over,
8:30.
it's fine, I mean, we're all.
Oh, yes.
Oh, we could bring her back.
A recess.
Oh, we don't have an ending time, cause I thought they said,
I thought it was, I don't know, I got.
I saw something.
We're gonna be out by 8, right, bro?
Oh, okay, that's the minimum. Sure, got you.
And we haven't had one, so we really need 6 hours.
Excessive parameters.
God cares for you.
What?
Hey, Flo, Bobby's in,
It's not even-
they canceled today's,
Okay.
Zoom training because a lot of people wanted to participate but couldn't make it.
I sent him a note that we have this.
So he said he's gonna reschedule.
I was thinking Zumba. Zumba training?
This is on this one?
Yes. Daniel needs
So I thought that meeting should be an in-person meeting, the training for that stuff.
I know.
Some of their standard.
IT over Zoom is not easy.
I'll tell Bobby,
Or social media in over Zoom is,
like, get together somewhere.
yes, where people can help you and can, you know, yeah.
Okay.
That's nice, but it's too small. This would make it too
Okay,
small.
guys, we ready?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, we're gonna have to get as much as we can in. I'm gonna try not to rush it too
It's also
much,
there was a lot of people that
but we'll
normally there
try to do the best that we can so we can get some
Oh,
of
you
the work
took
done
it
that's
for-
important to us.
Yes, ma'am.
There for-
Is this the one we're gonna, this is yours?
Yes.
Okay.
Everybody, this is the packet that I prepared for you.
Yes.
And I'm gonna move through some of it quickly, and then
Yeah.
others we're gonna stop and do the work with, okay? Some of the
Mm-hmm.
pages. But, let's, first of all, talk about, I wanna hone in on, what did we do what did we hone in the last time that we met? That's the first time I got to meet Pete.
I don't even
I had
remember.
met- Daniel wasn't here at the time.
I don't even remember
So
either.
Daniel, that's why we're gonna review it.
I've lost the packet, it's been so long ago, I was looking for it.
Probably
Yeah,
have
I
it somewhere,
know,
but.
and our packet at that time was called Better Together, right?
Yeah.
Because we're having new board members
Yeah.
and we had just had a board election,
I'll text it to you.
So we were trying to hone in on how we're gonna work well together.
Sure.
So these are three of the things that we honed in on. One was characteristics of effective boards. What does a real effective board look like in terms of how they do their work, okay? The other one that we didn't get to, and I want us to look at tonight, because that's critical, and that's, what are some of the danger signs in a board when it's not working the way it needs to work on? Because whether, I feel, and I'm sharing this with Lloyd, Southwest ISD is probably one of the best functioning boards in the city. I mean, I'm proud to say that I can't say more glowing things about you guys whenever I talk to other educators and encourage others to come to the system. But, you know, when things happen, changes happen, new dynamics occur, and sometimes because of the changes, we have to, as Flo was saying, we have to reevaluate what's working well and what isn't working well. So sometimes we have some danger signs that if we don't look at them and we don't discuss them and we don't address them in terms of actions, then they get worse. We don't want to do that. The third thing we looked at was the team wheel development. And I was able to get from you guys some feedback on the first bullet, which is characteristics of effective boards, and on the third bullet, which has to do with team wheel development. So I'm going to share with you what you told me about those two. We didn't get to the danger sign, so I'm hoping we can have some discussion on that tonight as well. Just want to remind everybody about what your major role is as a board member, okay? Let's not forget, you're a team of 8, not a team of 1, not a team of 3, you're a team of 8. That means you work collectively with the superintendent to make sure that this system functions well. You govern this system, and you oversee things with the superintendent as part of that team. One thing that's very important, and I think that's one of the things that I felt good about when you did give me some feedback, is you've always been tuned into student achievement in this district. So that's a big plus. You set the budget, you establish school boundaries and set them, you evaluate the superintendent's effectiveness, you hire and fire a superintendent, and you are supposed to be accountable and transparent to this community about how things are going well with the system, or if they're not, what isn't going well. So I just want to make sure, especially for Daniel and Pete, because you're new to this, these are your primary responsibilities as a board member. And that's why Lloyd was saying earlier, you're not here as an administrator, you're here to govern the district. So under the characteristics of effective school boards, remember you guys came up and you guys said, I think we're doing this okay, I put a minus on this, I put a plus
Oh,
on
yeah,
this.
I remember that.
So I got all pluses for number one. And I can see that by the way that you've developed a vision and you've got your, in your norms and your values, all of those are in place. The problem always is, which is a very human problem, is how often do we pay attention to that? And do we come back to see where are we and where aren't we with that? So that's gonna be important as well. It's not, shouldn't just be a piece of paper. If you don't come back often enough to look at how effectively are we performing this function. The number two got some minuses, and anytime you see a question mark after each of these, it's because some of you said it was a plus, some of you said it was a minus. So I wanted to honor both sides, and so I put question mark rather than a plus or a minus, because if it's a plus for some of you, but a minus for others, we have to help each other. So how do we go about addressing that if some of us don't feel that it's happening within our work as a team of 8? So number two had a plus and a minus, but once I saw that you had addressed it, I put addressed, because Lloyd had sent me some of the materials on have strong shared beliefs and values. How well you monitor that, or yourselves, that's gonna be the question mark.
Okay, can I ask you a quick question on that number one, commit to a vision? So you say we should come back to visit it. How do we visit that? Is it based on getting feedback from the
Exactly.
superintendent and the division heads?
The responsibility is of the administration to bring you the information so that you can see what progress are we making on this.
And like what points, what is an area that we could say, okay, Lloyd, we want you to show us how we're doing where?
Like
Like
after
what?
after benchmarks or something?
Yeah, it usually
Any
after the
program that we
testing
institute,
periods,
see how
but
the results
also, I know they used to do the benchmarks, I don't know what their, what the practice is right now. But I would say at least, for me, I think what would be important that if you do it at a minimum twice a year, where are we now? And at the end of the year, where are we now at that point, you know? Or you could do it 3 times, where are we now, mid-year, how are we doing, at the end of the year, how did we get?
Dr.
Yeah, how
Villegas
did
said
we-
trainings that were given that have to do with student achievement, they said we have to check in midway. You can't wait till the end and then say, oh, what happened?
Right.
You
And
really,
that's
as
why
a
I'm
board, need to.
suggesting
Mhm.
Mid-year
Mhm.
is always
Like
good
January or
to
something.
see how are we doing.
Mhm.
Because by that time, there's already been some benchmarks and things
Mhm.
where teachers have gotten to see how are the students progressing at this
And we get
point.
that feedback in the curriculum committee. We have a curriculum committee. We do get a lot of, we talk about student achievement a lot. But it just, not everything that we do there comes to the whole board.
Right. Yeah, and I think that would be important for the whole board, because that is your role to monitor. Student achievement should be one of your primary roles.
And don't we
To
get some of
really
that in the taper report, or that's not the same thing?
I mean,
Yes,
we do get a lot
discuss
of,
it.
we do get a lot of, like, they stand up and present,
We do
you know,
comparison
whatever,
data.
right.
But
But,
this-
okay, well, that's a good answer.
But it's also.
But
But
one
that's-
thing we may want to do is like a beginning of the year, mid-year, middle of the year,
Right.
BOY, MOY, and
Yeah.
AUI.
But that's why I said in a minimum, twice a year at the beginning and at the end, but you're right. If you don't monitor it, you don't know how you're doing mid-year.
Right.
So you get to the end
And make adjustments.
With
or-
the high expectations part, is also for any like new programs or new initiatives, to make sure they're feasible, so that, because we're
Yeah,
hauling.
and that's
so if it's
something
not-
you can really hone in
stand
on
up
during
and
your
do it.
brown bag lunches. That's why we created those, so you could really dive into a program, like if it's a new program, on something that you really need to learn more in depth about. That's what the brown bag lunch is. Or for you to do your work as a board on some of the things that need to be be addressed.
Thank you.
Okay, the third one had a question mark, accountability driven. Again, some of you felt good about it, some of you felt like, I don't get as much as I need to in terms of accountability. So it does suggest that you spend less time on operational issues and more focused on policies to improve student achievement. So how often as a board do you look at those policies so that you can have them help you direct your questions for student achievement? Number 4, have a collaborative relationship with staff and the community. That was also, some of you felt like that was happening well, some of you felt like no, that was not happening well. So this is some of the work that I think we need to do internally to see, okay, so what can we do action-wise to improve this piece so that we all feel pretty solid about it. Data savvy. I know that's sometimes hard because there's so many numbers and how do you, but I think one of the things that's happened as we've grown better in this area is that it's becoming more clear with the way it's designed for you to understand the data. Before it was very statistical and people just kind of went, oh, there's too many numbers, I don't really know what this means or where it's going. And I think now we have enough good thinking that's gone into this to have you understand that better. But you can't really ask good questions about student achievement or improvement of certain initiatives in the system if you don't have data to look at, right? So that's a critical piece for the board. Number 6, everybody voted that as a plus. And in speaking with Lloyd, he feels really solid about this too, and that is aligning and sustaining resources to meet district goals. The board usually wants to know, what do the schools need? What do we need to make sure that our students are succeeding and getting the experiences they need in this system? So that was a plus for everybody. Number 7, lead as a united team with the superintendent through collaboration and mutual trust. This is just not important to you board members, but to the superintendent. Because how well a board works with his or her superintendent is how effective a school system is or is not. So it's very important for board members and the superintendent to work well together, to communicate, to get information from each other, and to follow, the procedures as have been outlined for you this evening. And then number 8, take part in team development and training. That was a question mark. I don't know if that was a question mark because some of you felt like you hadn't done that yet. Some of you have done it, over the years many times. But we have some new board members, Pete is not new anymore. He's been here, a year now, Pete?
A year and a half.
A year and a half. But Daniel is new this year.
The baby board member.
Yeah, he's a baby's board. So it is important for all of you to engage in, that well, in developing yourselves to become highly effective as a board member and to be participating in the training. So I wanted to bring this back to you so you could see how you felt about this. My suggestion again is, this is a piece of paper. This is a document that I'm handing to you. But it is a document that comes from from research about what are those things that make a board highly effective. So if we're serious about being a highly effective board, I am going to recommend that you continue to look at this and begin to work to see how do we address those that we don't feel we're all on board with right now. Either because we're new or because there are other things that are happening, dynamics happening, within our own systems, culture, etc. Whatever the reason may be. But it is important that you revisit this and that you decide how best to address it. So here's some of the danger signs. This is the work that we're going to do right now. Okay? So when a board is not effective, what are some signs that tell you, we're being a little dysfunctional or major dysfunctional. What I would never want for this board, because you know how I feel about the system, it's like my second family. I would never want to have this board be dysfunctional. That we can have a little dysfunction sometimes, that's normal. Human beings that we are, we have different ways to see the world, etc. But I do want to make this point pretty loud, maybe because we do have Daniel that's new to us right now. Not that this is a behavior on his part. But I made it the last time and I want to re-emphasize it again this time. You have to separate out the personal from your role as a board member. When you're here as a board member, whatever personally, and you know, we may have differences with each other about certain things. I understand that because we all have different minds. We all see the world the way we see the world. But when you're here as a board, then your only focus are those kids and this system. And how do we make it the best it can be? So these are some danger signs. If they're occurring right now, I want you guys to really give me some feedback on this one, because I think we need to be honest and we need to be able to trust each other to express what it is that we feel is creating this dynamic through this danger sign, if it's occurring. So number one, the danger sign is when you're vaguely aware of improvement initiatives. I can tell you one person that's probably vaguely aware right now is Daniel, because he's new, right? Maybe Pete a little bit less because he's been here a year and a half. But if it is an issue board-wise, then I need for you to say, this is what I feel needs to happen in order for me to be more understanding of what those initiatives are. So what are some of the things, if any, that you feel in this particular one you need to bring up to each other? Are we gonna wrap this?
To each other about the district?
Well, I think that's what I'm
You have some
understanding.
improvement initiatives, right? What are service, growth,
Okay.
results? Are you vaguely aware of what's going on with that? Are you very well aware of what's going on with that? You're aware of the goals? You see what's going on to support each one of those? Or do you not?
And I think it's important to also state that there are some things that some of us are more aware of because you have more of an interest in. Special needs, you know, boosters, whatever the case may be, there's some things that we're more focused on. And I don't think that falls here. I think dissemination of information that comes from Lloyd or staff members, I think in general is given to everyone equally. But if you have a certain question about one certain item or a certain issue, I think a lot of times you may be more informed, even you, because you have that question and you're bringing that question hopefully to Lloyd. I know there might be an item that I'm more concerned on and I'll call Lloyd on. You know, I think that's, and I've always had the conversation with Lloyd, and Lloyd's been really good, that if it's something that could affect or should be informative to the rest of the board members, we do that. But there's at times where there's items that I don't need to know, that you called him on something that you were made aware of. If you let him know and he's handling it, then that's great. But there's certain things that people, because of, I mean, just think of all of us, you know, getting every bit of information that you're interested in, that you're interested in, that you're interested in, you know.
It speaks to like,
I have-
about the committees,
Yeah.
That's a lot of the meetings.
Yeah.
We're not at every one of us.
Yeah,
saying
we
every
generate
meeting.
facilities.
For-
We put out, and I think maybe that's something, I made a note, every committee ought to put out a sample of what went on to that
Sylvester,
committee.
for years, I requested that we have 10 to 15 minutes at the end of our brown bags to to talk to each other, right? And like for a decade, and it's never, it never happened. And what happens, I feel, is that the communication between the board is very scattered and hodgepodge, and some people get some information, some people get other information. I agree with him. We don't all need to know everything. But if we had a few minutes at the end of the meeting, of every meeting, at least what's important could be could be shared so that we could all be on the same page, right?
Or sometimes, some people get information that we don't, that we feel is important, and then you're like, why
Oh, I
didn't
didn't know that. Mhm.
Why
Well,
didn't they
that's
tell
what
us
happens
that?
with the committees. I mean,
Yeah.
that's one of the, there's pros and cons for a committee. The pro is we don't all have to sit for 6 hours at a board meeting. The con is we don't know what's going on with curriculum unless you're in the curriculum meeting. You don't know what's going on with we don't like brief each other on it. When the item comes up on the agenda, then we might be able to say, oh, in the committee meeting we had this. But
And I can tell you that one of the reasons the committee meeting has not gone farther is because there seems to be a lot of minutia that other board members have expressed they don't care about, right? It's like you go to the committee and you listen and we're not really that interested in it. But I know that with the facilities, there was a time when I was the new person, I wanted to know what was going on, and they created this sheet that they put out every week, because I couldn't be on the committee because there's already 3 members. So that sheet goes out to all of us that has the notes of the meeting, right? So,
There's 2 things I'm hearing. One is committees, you have committees, right? And what I'm hearing is maybe create a communication vehicle or something to let everybody, and especially board members, because community members will ask you, maybe you say, I don't know anything about it. I said, but you're a board member, how come you don't know anything about it, right? So maybe that would be one thing one task to do, is to ask the committees to develop a communication.
to
And
report
it
out.
could be, maybe Lloyd, it could be formatted here centrally, but the committee fills it out at the end so that it's typed and sent out, or however it be, through media, social media, or however you do it.
Unless we're getting, so a lot of times we go to committees and they present to us something that's going to be presented at the meeting.
Sometimes
And there's
in
some
the
stuff we-
curriculum.
A lot of
Yeah.
times,
The
yeah.
safety committees.
More than just
stuff we
sometimes.
can't-
It's
Right.
more often than not.
So and you can make that decision, if it's gonna be taken to the meeting, or if it's
Right.
not something everybody needs to know. I mean, that, you
Yeah.
can make that
There's a
decision.
lot of minutia in curriculum.
And then we have to remember too that a lot of times we're together doing things, but we're not even supposed to talk about a lot of stuff, so we don't bring it up, because
But this is
you're
a
just
pleasure.
you're used to being that person that you don't talk about what goes on here when you're out there.
Right. And again,
Information.
it shouldn't be a lengthy thing, and what were the 3 key things that came out of this committee?
3
What were
minutes.
the actions that this
Yes.
committee took? That's all.
Correct.
We address these are the actions the committee took.
Yeah.
not your opinion on how you would vote on the issue.
No.
I think that just the
You would
information.
say items, actions. That's
Like
it.
we recently we had a safety committee meeting, and there was a lot of information, but it was informational, and it came to us, or I don't know if it's come to us yet, but I think most of it did when they presented.
Yes.
Because sometimes it's a lot of stuff.
you don't
that's
wanna put out-
informational. Yeah.
I always say, what are the 3 or 4 things that are most important from this meeting to communicate?
You want to condense 2 hours into 5 minutes,
Yeah.
3 to 5 minutes.
I like the idea. We kind of have a motto with the note that we take with facility subcommittee,
Yeah.
and using that as a template.
Yeah.
I
That's
think
what I
that's
just
a really
read.
good way to do
Yeah,
it.
because that gives you an idea of what went on.
I just, for committees, if you're talking about committees, I would like to see that we kind of take after Northside or other, because I've seen other districts have more committees to where it represents budget, or they have a budget committee or a communications committee, which we're starting one. I don't know if any of us are on it. but I'm trying to figure out like those kind of committees where we could be participating in. And just being an initiative for improvements, the customer service committee, that's a big one where customer service is
Well, definitely
being
need
imperative.
customer service committee.
And I think my improvement initiative is trying to keep our kids here because we're losing a lot to charters. And that's the biggest thing for me is like 2,200.
And it's more about not losing the church, but it's more
where do you get the
about how do
2,200
we
number?
We had a
maintain our
meeting.
kids.
The,
Okay, I'm gonna move it because I
Public
gotta get
transfer
this
report.
done. But I hear what Pete is saying, and so if you need more committees, and I'll put this together so it makes sense. If we need more committees to address some of the major systemic initiatives that are important and critical, whether that's budget, or whether that's customer service, or whatever it may be, you guys will make that decision. But as a board, you can suggest, can we do that? And if so, then create the committee. But the main thing is the communication, so that people are aware. What's going on with the committees? What are the discussion points in those committees? And what are the outcomes of those discussion points? Okay, the second one is focused on external pressures. This is a danger sign. Sometimes we get a lot of community input, externally, some of which needs to become an internal piece because it's a big enough issue or something. But if the business of the district is the business of the district, what happens externally, unless it's a big thing that you know is going to be problematic to the system, then you bring it into the internal sphere. Otherwise, keep it out. Don't focus on the external as much as on the internal. Okay. Offer negative comments about students and staff. That's a big no-no. I need to just say that out loud for you guys. You are representing the whole system, not just yourself. It's the whole system as a board member. So what comes out of your mouth and the actions that you create by that can be very hurtful to the system. So it's important that you not engage in negative comments, especially about the people who work in the system, who are trying to make the system function. If there is a problem, you know the process. You can talk to the superintendent. The superintendent then decides who is going to take care of the problem and how it's going to be taken care of. But you're not the administrators, so, and you want to set the example of an effective work. Number 4, micromanage day-to-day operations, and we talked about that earlier. That's a big danger sign too. So I want you to look at those 2, 3, and 4. Are there any of those that you feel are important ones to discuss further and look at some ways in which we can get better at these, because they are right now a red flag for us?
And this is just as a board, right? We're not talking about
Right.
our,
Just the board. I'm talking about board members, you guys. Do you see any of that happening with any of you, or all of you, or some of you?
well, number 2, I mean, only each individual person could really answer that if they feel pressure, because if we felt, in our perspective, another person had that, we don't really know if they are feeling that, and so that, I would say, on my part, no, I same thing that you said, I take whatever complaints, and if I feel they're justified enough, I'll bring it up to Dr. Versta or first Sylvester, or one of the board members that I could get a hold of first, and just say, this is what I found, can I bring it to him? Yeah, you really should bring it up to him. But then there's other things I just directed them to, the specific department or whatever.
Right.
No, there's other things I kind of just talk them down, so from my end, I wouldn't feel.
And it's normal for community members to put some pressure on you guys if they don't like something that's going on. But it's not up to you guys to fix it, it's
Yeah.
up to the administration to fix it.
A lot of times you just have information that you can give them that helps them understand why.
clarify,
Right.
yeah.
And I think that's probably one of the most important things that we do, like on the daily when you're talking to people.
But again, the best thing is always to say, I will take this up with the superintendent, and the superintendent will facilitate your concern. Now, if it doesn't get facilitated, then you can always come back to the superintendent and say it's still an issue and it's growing, or whatever's happening. The micromanage is really important, we talked about it earlier. Do you see that as a red flag at all?
I mean, if it was happening, yes. I would, like I said, I would do that and go into the school, not asked to go. Any issues I have had with any admin or teachers, like I said, I brought it up to Dr. Rosta first, so I can't speak to other board members. So.
Yeah.
And I think when you still have a student here, it's a lot different. We had students here at one point and we're more involved, so we hear more things, we're more at the schools, present, you know, we go to events more. So there's a, you know, we understand
Yeah.
the fact that they bring you things when you're there a lot.
And it might be a good idea for you, if you go to the school and you've already cleared it through the superintendent's office, to say, I'm here. If you're there as a parent, I'm here as a parent. I'm
Well-
not here. Or if you're there as a board member because you're gonna see what's going on with the initiative that they want you to see, or whatever may be happening there. I'm here as a board member to, you know, support you in the initiative, or see for myself, how is it working?
So to that,
Always try to do it in a positive way.
my daughter, she's a senior, she's a cheerleader. Well, so they had the new meeting, and it was a parents' meeting, so I went and let her know, hey, I'm here as a parent, I'm not here as a board member. There was a few questions come up, and I had to say, hey, that's actually something you can't do.
Mhm.
And they asked why, well, you need to get with this department, because there was a HIPAA question where it was like, you need to get with HR, you can't do that. But only because I knew the question that they were talking
Right.
about.
And if you know, you can offer them advice, that's all right. You
But
just,
once they started delving into asking questions about this, what's this going on in this, or is this election, is this, are you,
It gets-
what are you gonna run, and all this, no, I told them, look, there's a parent, none,
Yeah, 'cause you-
so,
Yeah.
I'm not here to talk about elections or any of that stuff.
We remember those
So-
times, yeah.
yeah, no, that's good. But it is all right for you, if you have the information, to say you might wanna look at this, or you might wanna talk to so-and-so. As far as I know, that's not something that we can do. As a
Yeah.
board member, that's not something I can do. So it's all how you react, you know. If you react in a way that they feel like you're all on my side and forget the system or the administration, then that creates a big ripple effect and other things happen.
So is that saying we shouldn't talk at, say we attend a different meeting, somebody's meeting, we should not talk about, us being on the board as far as elections, or about how other, how other board members
That's not
feel
your
about us?
role there, you know, that's not for you to go and say, okay, I'm on the board and I need for you to tell me. Now, if they're telling you something on their own, that's a different story. you know.
No, but I mean, as far as like for another meeting is not where we go to campaign or do anything like that, right? 'Cause especially on school grounds.
Yeah, you know, there's nothing wrong with you saying, yes, I'm a board member, but how you react to their questions or answer their questions outside of that role is
And when it
also
comes to,
implicates certain
when it
things.
comes to elections though, also, if you speak to one-on-one, I would say that's fine, but when you're there as a group and they're listening to something you're gonna answer, I don't think you can get into that as far, if you're during elections or whatever.
I'm
It's
gonna
just not
show
right.
you the last slide only because this is good for us to know. I think this makes a lot of good sense for anybody who's a leader, and you guys are leaders. You've been selected to represent this system in this board. That makes you a leader in this community. So I felt this was a pretty powerful kind of saying that you do not lead by the example of your power. Just because you're a board member, that doesn't make you a leader. But by the power of your example. How you actualize your own role as a board member makes a big difference in terms of how people see you as a leader.
And I'm gonna clarify on like what he said, or what he was saying, because I know I've been to some meetings, and they have people ask me, "Oh, do you have a kid in the bamboo?" Say I'm in the bambooster. Do you have a kid in the bambooster? And I always say, "Oh, they're all my kids. They're all my students. I don't treat none of the students any different." I said, "Well, when they ask, why are they all yours?" I said, "Because that's when I say I'm a board member." And I say, I introduce myself, and I always say what I'm advocating. I'm always here. I want to be in the public side. I want to be we don't have an office. My office is being in the public, being in just here, being at the meetings or being at events. That's my office, and then I'm just available to them. And I let them know I'm just available here to if you have any questions, or I could direct you in a way. If I do get a complaint, I always say, well, you need to go back to your principal. That's my first thing I always tell them is go back to your principal and see what they tell you, and tell them you talk to me, and let them know that you already talked to me. And then usually after that, I should have emailed the Lloyd, or it hardly ever gets to where like it needs to get a Lloyd, but it just always goes to that point where it always sends them back to the principal or the vice principals. Those are my first directives, is always to go back to your principal, vice principal, let them know you talk to me and you want to get help.
Right,
And,
and that's the way to do that. Yeah.
But
I
and
also
then
don't wanna feel like.
But you're not there representing the board.
no, I'm not, but I'm a board member.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
Oh, yeah.
You also almost make it, I don't know, it seemed like, just the way you explained it, like you're almost hijacking part of their meeting, because you're saying,
Yeah, it
I'm
was-
here for your sounding board, they're all my kids, but, bring
But
your
it was-
questions to
most of
me
the time when I
instead of
address
them
those-
talking to each other.
when I do address, it's always after a meeting. And I never like stand up and say, oh, I'm the board member during a meeting or anything. I just sit in the back, always sit in the back. And I always like wait till the end of when the meeting's over, and then when people, like yesterday I was filling out for the bambooster, they asked, I saw all, and they said, what do you mean by all? And it was a new person. I said, well, that's when I explained. And I explained who I was, like, and
Yeah.
I'm just here for support. I'm here to push a thing. I'm out here doing help to do with concessions.
The support's fine, I just don't want us, any club to feel like we're micromanaging or
No, I-
hijacking their meeting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
because when you tell someone, tell the principal you already talked to me, it's like,
Yeah.
well,
I mean,
what does that
really,
mean
you-
to the principal?
Yeah.
Now the principal's is gonna
I really,
feel uncomfortable.
I really.
Well, I
do-
just wanted to let them know that they had talked to me, and then if I should have emailed the Lloyd, at least
He
knows
already
that we
knows.
talked. At least I'm letting them know that they came to me with that, and they apparently usually when I get something, it's usually I went to go speak to vice principal. I didn't get nothing back, sir. I was like, oh, okay. Well, let them know. And I usually this is what I tell them. I said, you got to remember. I talk them down a little bit. I say, look, you got to remember they have over 500 kids in their schools. And you got to remember, they're not going to get back to you in 48 hours. But I'll just ask them, when can you get back to me, and get a clarification when they get back to you so we can have better service. And let them know that I'm not, like usually it's like that all gets handled at the meeting. If it's something so small, I just send them back to
yeah.
to the
No, and I think
principals.
that's fine.
No, I think that's
I
good.
think what you guys are saying, and there's a difference here. For you to be in a meeting, and at the end of the meeting, somebody comes and with you with a concern, that's perfectly okay, because they know you're a board member. For you to say, I'm a board member, do you have any concerns, bring them to me, because I'll take care
Yeah,
of
I
it.
don't do that.
Don't, because that would totally not be appropriate for you guys to do, okay? What you can say though, if they come to you, not that you say, come to me, because I'm a board member, that goes back to you using your power, rather than providing an example of what power means in a good way.
I want to say something as well. I think that Pete in particular gets a lot of pushback from everybody, and I don't think it's fair, and I don't think it's right. I think if you have a relationship with him and it's out of concern or love or mentorship or hey, let me help him out, it's one thing, but it doesn't feel like that sometimes. And sometimes when the information comes back to him, it's by people that do the same or worse, and I have seen it. I've been here. And so he's very fresh, he's very energetic, he has all these hopes and dreams, and he's and we've been around a long time, and He's got a lot of energy. He's
And I think
bebopping
that's-
around everywhere, and it's great. I think it's great. But we're constantly slapping him down, you know. So that's why I think some of this stuff is important, because we need to elevate him, not push him down.
I only bring up those concerns because those are concerns that have been brought up by the way people felt when he's been at certain meetings or certain events where it's a kid event.
Right. So I hear the same
And they don't
concerns
feel
about other board
comfortable.
members as
Oh,
well.
no, I know, but
right?
that's why we're
By
doing
other
it.
people, right? So.
So,
That's
so
why we're
this
doing it.
applies then, not just to Pete,
Mhm.
it applies to all of you
No,
guys,
that's right.
okay?
Mhm.
And that
Well, that's why I
sometimes,
didn't say
because
it
they
then. I
know
was
you're a
just-
board
No,
member.
I know, but
But he gets it a lot.
No, but that's why I was just saying in general, this is why we need to clarify.
Yeah, and he probably gets it a lot, because like you said, he makes himself available to go learn more about the initiative, or to, find out more about what's going on in the system. But if they know he's a board member, of course, some people will come to you, to all of you, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So what I just want you to go back and remember is with the thing I just showed you right now. It's the power of your example. How do you facilitate those situations so that they don't become a problem? Because obviously I can hear it, my ears are there, that it is a problem. Not just with Pete, maybe with some of you guys too. So if it is, how do we fix it? Because there is a process of how those are handled. And don't, my only thing is going back to your leaders. You're the leaders of the system, along with the superintendent. So how you facilitate those conversations and those questions make a difference for how the board works together, okay?
Can I just say something? I think the main issue is that as a board, we've never, that I know of, we've never been the kind of board members that will go to like a band booster meeting if we don't have somebody of our own in the band, right? I'm not saying it's right or wrong, I'm just saying we've just never done that. We don't go to cheerleader tryouts. We just don't do that. So then when you hear that a board member keeps doing that, you're like, should we be doing that? You know what I mean? Because we've always gone to our kids' things and banquets and stuff like that. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but when you get parents saying, why is so-and-so at the, whatever tryout, I don't know. I don't know, right? So I think it just makes us uncomfortable because we've never done it. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. We've just never done it. I was in band boosters and I got out because every time I went to the band booster when my boys were in the band, they kept asking me, how come y'all can't give us this? And why don't you give us this? And I'm like, hey, I'm just trying to make nachos, right? I don't want to be, so I just stopped.
And
I just gave my money and stopped going because you couldn't separate yourself from
And
being.
it's hard in a community like this because it's a very tight-knit community, right? So it's not that it's right or it's
Right.
wrong. It isn't,
Yeah.
okay? It's how you facilitate your persona as a board member in that setting.
Yeah.
Okay, that's really what the bottom line is. If you don't do it the way that we've all agreed on, and that we've got your regulations, you're gonna go back and make sure
Well,
that,
Dr. Because I think there's some sort of feelings out there in our community because, Pete, won and Mike lost, and Mike was 40 years in our community, right? And I'm
And-
sure
and
there's
so
some
it's
feelings
natural.
out there, so
Sure, sure.
the complaints are gonna be of a certain nature potentially. Not that they're not valid, just that there's, reasons or whatever.
okay, but remember, those are external pressures.
Yes, exactly.
And I want to clarify on that cheerleading thing. I saw it on the list, and I just, well, if I have on the list, there's a list of things we get invited to, and I'm like, oh, okay, I'm gonna go. Like I put it on my calendar, and I follow the calendars for what's going on. And
Very
I have 4 calendars for the district.
And
And-
that's a way you want to be more informed, I understand. Perfectly okay. The problem will be is if you facilitate the board's role in your persona at that meeting. So don't, just, you go there to learn more about it. If they come and say something, say, I will follow the procedure and pass it on. That's all.
But
Make
Ms. Villegas,
it,
aren't we supposed to go to events that we get invited to? We don't, or we can just go anywhere?
Just because
If
it's on
you're
the calendar
invited.
doesn't
I go to a
mean
lock-in
we're
at the high school if I'm not invited? What if I'm not invited?
The lock-in was
I
on the
mean, I'm just
calendar.
saying. What
I
if-
know, but just.
So I didn't say that, I'm saying. I'm
Okay,
just-
here's my understanding. We just
Example.
heard earlier the regulations on that.
Yeah.
If you go to the high school for something you're not invited, you go through the superintendent's office and say, I understand, is it gonna be all right for me to, will you let the principal know I'll be attending?
Yeah.
That you do that, okay?
I think maybe
And
you
it was
think
after-
that if
it
it's
was
on the
after school
calendar, that they're inviting us, but just because it's on the calendar doesn't mean they're extending it. We get invitations to events. It doesn't mean,
I do get
I'm just
invitations.
saying, I know, but like when you go to a lock-in,
Which
you
lock-in are you
make,
talking
I don't
about
know,
first?
I didn't even know you went to a lock-in.
I
I
I'm
went
just
to
saying.
one. I went to my son's, like,
Okay, well-
and then I got invited by the teacher, that's what,
That's totally different.
that's totally different.
different
But
if
that's
your
what I'm
son invites
saying.
you to
But
the
still, as
lock-in.
board members, we have a right to connect with our community wherever we see fit,
I'm saying you
right?
have a right
You just
to-
follow the
yes.
rules, right?
As
Yeah.
long as you're not there to politic
know-
or to do things that are
Connecting
out
with your
of
community,
your
right?
role in that
Right.
way, because that's what the community, it's a small community.
Well, and
It's
clarifying
not,
is
Dr.
that makes
Villegas,
a big
it's not that
difference.
small anymore.
No,
It's
I guess
grown
it's
a lot,
but
yes,
Still, it's a community. It
Yes.
isn't like,
yes.
no,
I
spread over
agree.
Kingdom Come. It's not like Northside ISD or Northeast.
All over
And
the
I'll
place,
just say
yeah.
that personally, I got off of Band Boosters. I got off of Southwest Colony League. I got off of PTA, and I did all three of those for 4 to 10 years. Because I started noting that those meetings, regardless of what I say or don't say, were conducted differently because I was there, because I was a board member. And this was, I'm talking early in my career. Did it take me a couple of years to understand? Yes, it did. For any of us to think that any kind of meeting, band booster, cheerleaders,
Athletics, that happened to me
whatever
too.
is gonna act the same as they would without us being there is good or bad. You cannot say that, okay? And I'll just say that. I'm not saying wrong or right, because there is no wrong or right. Now, there is a wrong or right of behavior,
Exactly.
but there is no wrong or right to attending, and there's nothing in writing.
Right.
But I just want to put out, and I know there's people sitting here that got off of, groups, boosters, for probably the same reason, or were maybe advised. I went to someone who was on the board at the time. I went to the superintendent who was superintendent at the time, and they pretty much told me, look, and that's exactly what they told me. If you think that band booster group is going to act the same with you there or without you there, then without you there, you're kidding yourself, because they're not, okay? And if you feel okay with being there, knowing that, do it. Just watch your behavior.
Exactly. I think that's really the bottom line. Now, if this is a big red flag right now, when you guys work on the policies and procedures, the operational guidelines, you might want to look at that. Because it might be one of the things you want to address within those regulations. Okay?
Yeah.
So we've had enough discussion on it, but I think
Yeah.
it needs to be addressed. Okay?
Yes.
Yeah, it needs
So
to-
I'm gonna put the micromanage, okay? Now, we're gonna get to the other one, and I need to get to
Sorry.
this one, you guys, because we didn't the last time.
That was an accident.
Disregard agenda process and the chain of command. This goes back to your meeting agendas, okay? And one of the things I want to do tonight, if you will humor me and be part of this process, here's what I'm thinking. I shared this with Lloyd, and he seemed to think, yeah, that makes sense. So I'm hoping it makes sense. Every one of us in here would like to has a value or a norm that we really wish would be followed in our meetings, right? Maybe there's more than one, but we can't have 100. We can't have 50, we can't have 25, we shouldn't even have 10, okay? So I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna have each of you identify 2 norms or 2 behaviors. I'm gonna call it behaviors because norms are behaviors, okay? 2 behaviors that you really feel are important in the meeting agenda process. Whether it's an executive board meeting, whether it's a public meeting, or whether it's a brown bag meeting, or it's a committee meeting that you facilitate or that you're in, what are 2 critical behaviors? Because they've either been a pain in the neck for you, or because you feel like we're not, we can't get the work done because these things, get in the way. So what are 2 things? We're gonna end up with 16, because Lloyd, do you want to contribute to this, or do you want to just let the board members contribute to this?
I go either way.
Okay.
I'll play.
So we will have 16. Out of those 16, we're gonna come up with only 7
So
that we're
something
gonna
that annoys us?
prioritize, okay? So write them out, then you're gonna tell me what those are. I want you to think about it for a minute or 2.
Behaviors that what? That what?
That annoy us, or that we want
No,
to see
that-
happen?
So let me give you an example of a no.
Okay.
So when you're in a meeting and maybe people are talking over each other, okay? I saw a little bit of that behavior right now between you and you, not that you were being mean to each other, but Yolanda is saying something, you were saying something, so you don't hear each other,
Yeah.
okay? So do we talk over each other? We don't want people to talk over each other. That might be a norm, I wish people would not talk over each other. We can word it differently later in more technical.
What you're talking about, at a board meeting,
Uh,
at a board meeting.
At any meeting, yeah,
Oh.
any meeting that you're involved in as a board, yeah.
Talking about meeting norms.
Usually, yeah, meeting norms, not the norms that you have as a board right now, but when you're meeting. Do you listen for understanding, or do you just listen and you don't try to understand? Okay, the other perspective. That's a norm. Listening for understanding. Okay, that's a norm. Is that critical and important to you? What are some behaviors that occur with your meetings that you feel need to be addressed and need to be part of a norm because they get in the way of having an effective meeting? Okay, so identify 2, and then we're gonna write them up
It's
here.
a problem if you can't read your own handwriting.
What annoys you?
Asking too many questions.
Okay. Okay, what else? You want them on a Post-it?
No,
Oh, where you gonna say it out
you're
loud?
gonna say it out.
Oh, okay.
Okay. All right. Who's ready to go?
I'll go.
Okay, Ida?
So, the one I'm guilty of myself sometimes, but I've tried over the years to be better about, is not to blindside the administration or the staff by something you have inside information about.
So do not blindside.
Yeah, like if you find something out
Administration.
about something, and then it should have been questioned in private first, but you blindside them in the meeting, that's wrong.
So it's about staff, about information you already.
Yeah, that you already know what the answer is, but you ask them because you want everybody else to know of something that's going on.
And I'll condense these, okay?
Okay, and my second one is questioning something in public at the meeting that you already have gotten your answer for from the staff.
Questioning what?
Questioning something how we get our agenda and we have like a couple of days to ask questions, or like a day, and then so we get the answer, but then we ask the question again. And maybe not with the best motive. And I'm just saying, I've done both of those, so I'm not pointing fingers at anybody.
Okay?
I'll go because that was kind of part of one of my second one. About making sure we all kind of understand I know it's already part of the other part about the reading the agenda, the policy, but it's also because I know some of the meetings have gone really long. There's questions I've seen over the agenda where I know there's simple questions, so instead of waiting to bring it there, like maybe I didn't understand one of the numbers on Brandon's figures, no, I bring it up with Brandon. Or there was something about the wording, I think only like the second month I was here, and I brought it up and said, hey, before I bring this up, you might want to just adjust. Oh, it was the taxing, where people were saying we were raising the taxes, and we had to say technically, maybe actually me and Pete were talking about it, because we lowered the tax, but it went up because of the values, and so you might, instead of not mentioning that, because it wasn't in the agenda, you might want to explain yourself. So instead of waiting to the meeting where I brought that up and then we had a discussion on it, you just kind of went ahead and said it, so that way we weren't, 20 minutes
Okay,
long
so
talking.
the norm would be what exactly?
If you have some questions beforehand, making sure that we're getting those questions answered. That way,
Answered by the administration.
and then that way maybe that's something they can already put in their presentation, so we're not adding 20 minutes to a conversation on something that's presented.
And, these are also part of those regulations?
Yes.
They'll be in there?
And one of mine was very similar to that. I put on here, be conscientious of meeting time and be prudent with the amount of questions asked. If you have too many questions, then get them taken care of before the meeting instead of at the meeting. Because sometimes someone has way too many questions and it just goes on and on. And, well, we were all thinking the same thing, and then you don't even have time to ask questions yourself.
I think it's
That's
also-
another thing I had, is hoarding the floor. When you hoard the floor and you don't give someone else an opportunity to speak or ask questions,
So
you
do
know,
not hoard the floor.
yeah,
I think just, like previous.
not
meetings,
giving
like
others a
this,
chance to speak,
we're still in
and
closed session, we're still some
And
of
I
these
think
other-
we've all done that on the topics that are really important to us.
yes, I think.
So
we
it's, yeah. It's
Both
like
of them said
we
what
all
I said,
need
the
to
blind
do
side and the administrator, whenever they're representing something, presenting something, blindsiding them, and then mine is asking too many questions.
Yeah,
And
we'll see for some of these kind of fit together, and
And I
then
know
we'll
someone,
condense it.
and I know you talked about talking over other people, but sometimes talking over someone is because you wanna get something in and you don't have an opportunity to get your word in.
Yeah, part of mine
Yeah,
was-
and I only mean like when you do it live.
Oh.
You're not listening to each other, you're just talking over
We
each
do
other.
that.
And
I
that's-
wanna go
And I
to-
think we're all guilty of it.
And that's
you
why I
know.
put give people proper respect when they're speaking. Just somebody's already talking, or you go to start and everybody, two people start at the same time, just don't.
And I think we're
don't
pretty
raise your
good
voice and
about all
finish.
that.
No, sometimes we're not.
Well, I wanna-
We're pretty
I-
good, but sometimes when we're passionate about certain issues, that's when it becomes a problem. We
And-
forget our
and-
manners.
And along those lines, asking a question prior to allowing the presentation to end, is something that I think maybe would answer a lot of that, allow a staff presentation to, finish. If you have a question, write it down. And
Oh,
then-
yeah, that's something that makes me,
and
that
then
annoys me.
It may get answered in the presentation. So,
Yeah.
so a lot of times, and I've tried to teach that, but I haven't done a good job, apparently.
I do it all the time. I ask questions.
And then speaking, and something it's just been a practice here, speaking without recognition. I mean, even all the years Mike was president, when we were ready to speak, we spoke, and we still do, and it's worked. But what I'm hearing now is we need to start speaking with recognition.
So recognize the speaker?
And it's
or-
in the policy, yeah, the president
Is it?
recognized
Or wait to be
someone
recognized to speak.
before a question, and then
But you have to.
allow others, I'm also curious, allow others to ask questions before going back to the same person. And it's I read it.
Okay,
either
so the
operation or-
specific norm, give me a specific norm.
speaking without recognition.
Not to?
Yeah.
Do not
Do you
speak.
want to know what we're doing or what we should be doing?
And that's
'Cause
part
we're
of,
speaking
that'll
without
be part,
recognition.
that is part of your role
Yeah,
though, to
yeah.
identify the
It's
person
always
who
worked,
needs.
I mean, it's always been the way we do things, but I just, now we need
I
to.
think it's very important to allow the presentation to be given to.
I'd like to speak for a minute.
Okay, you don't want that?
First of all, I'd like to point out that our meetings are pretty efficient. They're always 2 to 3 hours, and we do pretty well with that. I think in the past, there was not a lot of dissension in the ranks, so that's what this board is used to. And I don't think we're getting that as much now. So now the rules, now everybody wants to change the rules, right? So we've never recognized anyone, that's just the way it's been done, people just speak up. And I don't agree with that hoarding of time, because we don't have time limits and we get to speak, and if you wanna speak, you wait till the other person pauses or stops and then you can speak, right? So we don't have time limits, and one of the things that I do wanna say is that very recently I've been shut down when I'm from making my point or making, very important information that I wanted to get out. And I was shut down and told I had a time limit, and that has not ever been a norm for us. So I was very, very upset about that.
So is it more about, not listening for understanding, or is it about listening and wanting to?
I felt like
Cut
what
you
I
off.
had to say was not, I got shut down.
So you're saying one of the norms would be not to cut people off? or
Not to shut them down, like
not to
complete
shut
shutdown,
people down.
right?
I think mine goes with that, just, hearing the minority, like listening to the minority.
Okay. Let me finish this, and then we'll get also Pete.
And I
No,
got
good.
my
Sure,
second
go.
one, let me
Go
do
ahead,
my
go
second
ahead.
one, Pete. And then the other one is that I think, there's a lot of, physical, like impatience and rolling of eyes and, comments under the breath, because people don't want you to ask questions because they wanna go home.
So like refrain from body language.
Yeah, it's like very obvious, it's very visible, it's like, okay, so like, I feel like I'm trying to do my job and ask the questions and get the answers, and I don't think our role is.
Negative body language.
Well, I don't think they keep saying ask all the questions in advance so that we don't do it here, but part of our job is to, this is a public meeting, right?
I didn't
So-
say ask all the questions.
Right, but you
I
can't
said
ask everything before.
If you have a bunch of questions, get some of them taken care of.
But nobody has
before.
ever had a bunch. No more than 2-3 questions get asked by any one person at any given point in time. Even Pete, who's brand new, he'll ask 2 or 3 questions. We're not asking 20 questions.
And here's the only thing I want to make sure we all understand on this. There are some questions that can be and should be, and that's part of your board policy and regulations. Try to get the answers first from the administration. They can say, and all you have to say, I have this question because I'm not clear on what the intent is, or I don't understand exactly what this means in this place, or whatever. Let the administration. Now, if your question still needs more clarity because a presentation is being made and something comes up that you haven't heard before, and you have a question, it's perfectly all right for you to ask the question and say, now when you say this, what do you mean by, or when you said this, explain to me a little better because I didn't understand that part, or however you want, in a way that the person can hear your question without getting.
Well, Dr. V, the presenters a lot of times tell us, ask if you have any questions, please interrupt or just stop me. They always tell us that. And I think, I do that if I'm told that, I do that. I don't wait till the end because I don't want to forget or be off topic already. And then the other thing that I've brought up over and over and over again, and nobody, we get our board book Friday afternoon, almost closing. I know that this is not my job and I don't get paid for it. I don't work weekends. I try to leave that to my family. I give the district a lot Monday through Friday. I don't read my board book on Saturday and Sunday. Sometimes I read it on Monday, sometimes I read it on Tuesday, and sometimes there's just no time to get those questions in, right? So you gotta ask them sometime.
And it's all right to ask a question as long as you don't belabor the point. And you know, you
Yeah, it's
understand
just
that.
informational.
It's like, okay, well, I'll get back, maybe what I'll do is meet with you later so I can understand it more or something. Because you do want to not belabor something where it just takes over the entire, you know, you don't wanna have the kind of meetings that other systems have where they're there till 1 a.m. or.
We've never done that.
Anything like that. So you do have to be cognizant of time, but you're there as a board to ask questions as well. And it's how you ask them, and then if it is gonna take more time, then let the person know that you would like to meet with them to make sure you understand it better. You know, now if it's something that you have to take action on that evening,
Yeah.
then that's a different story. You probably need to get a little bit more answers, you know, before you take that action or before you vote yes or no.
Well, and Dr. Rhea, I can tell you that once or twice I have belabored the point when I've felt a little bit blindsided and like we're gonna vote. Yeah, we got the board book, but I read it the day before and I'm like, oh my God. And then I'm like, wait a minute, please wait before we vote. And I might ask more questions than typical, and maybe, you know, people might get upset about that.
No, I understand. Okay, so Yolanda's got her two peak.
I think mine was listen to the majority, and I clarified with most of hers where she was like under the breath, like listen to that you like you want. I think listen to when it was ready. There was a lot of times I know that whatever she said about under the breath and doing like, oh, why are you here so long? And I mean, I try to shorten my stuff. I really try. I really respect the time of all my board members. I try to shorten my stuff, and like I have had the chances where I always try to get questions to Lloyd the day before. But like I said, sometimes Sunday I'm with my family. Monday I have watching my grandkids, and then next thing you know, I'm like stuck doing it on Tuesday. And then trying to get those questions, that's our Tuesday. And then sometimes in the board book, it's not even a presentable item. It's just Brandon's gonna present on budget. And then you're like, oh God, like you don't have the schematics of thing, and he's redoing them all as we speak. And then when you get them there, then you gotta ask questions because it's just first time being presented, it's not in the board
And that's
book.
your role as a board member to ask questions. There's nothing wrong with asking questions, guys. It's how that question is facilitated by this guy, who's your president, in a way that it doesn't, you use the word hoard, I don't know if that's the right word to use, but it doesn't take over the entire meeting, and then you can't get to some of the major other decisions you
And
need
I
to
think the
make.
other thing is just respect us. So I have disabilities. I'm dyslexic. I have a traumatic brain injury. So some of the things may come out slower than some things were. Trying to relate that information to the question straight to the person I needed to go to is kind of hard sometimes, and I want people to know that like it's not something that I can like control and like trying to get my message across. I mean, I'm trying to do my best, and
Well, and so I'm gonna put what I said earlier, listen for understanding, because what you're trying to tell me is you want your fellow board members to listen to your question, or to listen, or the person presenting, to listen to your question so that they can understand where you're coming from.
yeah,
Right.
and I think it's hard to try to help to get them to understand where I'm coming from sometimes. And I mean, I'm sorry for that. I do apologize. But at the same time, is like where Flo said something. Nasi, I forgot. Basically, when you have that listening for understanding and
Can you go back to the first page? I don't remember reminding.
no, I'm good. I think
When you
that
think about it, just tell us when you remember.
I just go blank. That's what happens.
Okay.
But sometimes he's trying to express something, I can see him struggling to find the words to articulate what he's trying to, so we just have to be patient.
Yeah. And you have the other, be patient.
And I know that,
Oh, there it is. I'm sorry if I did. I know I've seen it happen in our closed sessions where like we always talk over each other, and it's an understanding. Like it's hard to when you have a pause, and you think someone stopped, but they really didn't stop it because they're gathering their insight, and then they go again, and then like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump in, but I thought the long pause was the stop that you
Yeah,
started for.
what I said
So-
is sometimes you don't
I
wanna
guess-
speak over someone, but it's
This
the
is
only
the-
way you can get a
Yeah.
word in.
And then I don't know if it's ending, so I don't want to interrupt them. So that's why what I started doing was every time you say questions, I said, oh, I have questions. I always wait till the end because I don't want to jump into everybody's
And you
discussion.
should. I
And
mean,
that's what I do. I mean, I started doing that because that way I can, and I write them down and then I started noticing that they ask the same questions. So I'll be like, oh, that one's gone, that one's gone. And then by the time you know, I mean, I have no questions. But if I have two questions at the end, these, right, when they either move, like we move, and then I say, okay, I have questions. So that way, because I move on it, because I really want to move on it, but I just have a couple of questions. That's how I mean, that's the thing I could figure out to help me get better at those things. And I try to figure out how to self-assess myself to be a better person for our board.
James, did you have anything else?
Yeah, you wrote one of mine down, the other one I just wrote
I'm gonna do
from.
my best not to sign.
Lloyd, anything that you want to say about
I put, as a norm, we should work not to interpret different perspectives personally.
I'm sorry, Lloyd, what was that? As a board, what?
Don't interpret the fact that we have different perspectives, like at a personal level. Keep it about the item, that everyone can speak to their perspective, but sometimes if we speak to the person making it, then it takes
It becomes
on a whole
personal.
different route. Keep it about, it's in our thing, about what we're deliberating on.
Right.
And then the other one was true team respect. True team respect. Presence.
I think one of our biggest problems as a board right now is we don't all trust each other. We just don't. And so, it's like I was talking to Dave and I said, I don't think, I really don't think it's affected how we, conduct school. Like, we're still able to put, like, school policies, curriculum things they wanna do, staff, all that kind of stuff. I don't think it affects how we are running or governing the district, but I think as individuals, we've lost the trust that we used to have with each other. For good or bad, it's just not there. And so, until we ever rebuild that trust, I don't think we can ever really be a great functioning team of 8. But at the same time, I don't think we vote on school, kid issues, staff issues, policy issues. I don't think we vote on those 5-2. We just don't. I mean, most of our votes are 7-0. But there are things that, I mean, we can't just fool ourselves and think we're gonna come out like kumbaya. There's just a distrust amongst each other, and I don't know that that's even fixable. I think we can still work together if we do our best to respect each other in meetings and let us express our opinions. We're never gonna agree on some of the issues, the big issues that we know we all don't agree on, but, we still can be,
Yeah.
courteous to each other.
And, trust is something that requires teamwork in different kinds of good ways to create that trust. Remember that when I met with you guys the last time, and I emphasized this part, especially because of what had just happened with Mr. Frazier passing and the dynamics of the board had changed, et cetera, it affected the system because he had been part of the system for 40 years, So yeah, things change. But your most important role is not what you're doing outside as a member of the community.
Right.
Your most important role is the work you're doing here together. So you have to trust the work you're doing together here. You can ask the questions, you can have different perspectives, you can see things in different ways, but ultimately, does this make sense, whatever decision you're making, so that you trust each other to make the best decision for the kids in this system? period, punto acabado, you know. Whatever is out in the community and all that, I know you get impacted because you're board members, I understand that. And you're part of the community, so you have some of your own feelings about that. But that has to stay out there, that's external, that's external. Internally, your role is to be the most effective board member you can be to the system. You're gonna have, and I can tell you this, having been a superintendent in several systems, you're going to have the selection of the new superintendent when Lloyd leaves us, okay? Just like when I left you. A person, you know, if you want a high-quality person, what do you think the first thing that person does before he or she applies for a system?
That's the system, the board.
Looks at the board. How functional, how effective is that board? Because nobody wants to come into a system that's dysfunctional, okay? Because you know what? They'll be gone in a year or two because the board doesn't let them move the agenda because they've got internal conflicts, because externally others, you don't want to get to that point. That you can have disagreements and different perspectives and different discussions. You can listen to her understanding. It doesn't mean I'll agree with what you're saying, Pete or Daniel or Chloe or whoever, but I'm going to listen to what you have to say. And maybe in the end, I may not totally agree, but I can live with it. Okay, I can live with it because that's important to the system. I mean, I do think the government negotiates. I mean, they have a long list of things and ultimately come with 3 or 4 only, right? Because there's negotiation back and forth. So that's your role, right? You can have discussions, you can have disagreements, but listen for the understanding and then ultimately come to do what's best for the system and for the kids in the system. That's all that you have to do. But, and you have to respect others' opinions, others' perspectives. You have to respect them. You may not agree with them, but you have to respect them. You know, one of the things I'm very proud of Yolanda and Ida about, we met last year because, you know, stuff had changed, and then we were talking about the elections and all that. And Yolanda, you know, we talked about the election that was coming forward. Yolanda was very clear in telling Ida, well, look, I respect you, but I'm going to be supporting this other person. And Ida said, okay. But we cleared that up then, right? Nobody, I mean, it was great. It was professional for you guys to have that conversation. And Ida may not have liked it, or you may not have liked it, but you understood each other and where each other stood, and then you went on about your business. And that's the way it should be for everybody that sits on this board. You're different individuals. You have your communities that you serve, but you only have one system. And how effective you are in that system is going to make all the difference for the kids in it. So that's important. Okay, what I am going to ask you to do now, I'm just going to ask you to, because there's this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. We're only going to come up with 7, okay? So look at these. You decide which are the 7
Which
that are gonna
overlap?
be most important to you. And I'm gonna put up the number, you can let me
Can
know.
we cross through any that overlap?
Yes. you
So
can.
that way we have less to choose from?
Yes. If we see something here and it's important, but we find it's something else, we'll just say, well, these two kind of go together, but we'll condense.
There's a lot of these.
Hmm?
Okay.
Yeah, I think it might already be.
A lot of them basically refer to
I
just
mean, we're
respecting
already
each
here,
other's
Sylvester.
voice and
Might as well
stuff.
stay.
How much longer we gotta take?
Let's get it done.
Yes.
That way, how about if I get, let you go no later than 9?
That's
Yeah.
Is that okay?
That's fine.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, so, meeting norms, let's talk about, do not blindside administration staff about information you already know the answer to. And question something you already have the answer to, which is kind of,
Well, then let me clarify. The first one, I mean, like, somebody calls me and says, hey, did you know that they're gonna do this at the board meeting? And I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. And instead of me calling Lloyd and saying, hey Lloyd, are y'all really gonna blah, blah, blah? I bring it up at the meeting already knowing that they're gonna be like, oh, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I don't talk to a lot of people anymore, to be honest with you, that work in the system. I just kind of separate. I just look at big picture. I don't get involved anymore. I used to a lot, but I don't do it anymore. Because I'm working now. I don't have time. But I mean, I've seen it happen where we might have inside information that we know a decision has been made, and then we bring it up at the meeting so that everybody knows I'm not happy with that decision.
What does
You know
that
what I mean?
mean? I don't understand what you're trying to say.
I'm saying like you're
Give me
on,
an
you're on a
example.
committee,
Right.
right? You talk to whoever's on the committee. I don't know, Dalila, whoever is on the committee, and they want something done, right? And Lloyd's already said, we're not gonna do that. This is how we're gonna do this thing. But then you bring it up in a meeting and say, oh, we should do this and this and this. How come we're not doing this? When Lloyd's already talked to the senior staff and said, we're not gonna do this and this and this.
That has never happened. What are you talking
Well, I mean,
about?
I think it has happened, but I mean,
No.
if they don't wanna put it on there, then.
Okay, well, do you agree this is a problem right now?
I don't think it's a problem. I've
Okay.
never noticed it.
All right.
Maybe the second one,
You already have answer to. A lot of times I feel like we don't even have an answer to stuff. That's why we're asking.
Whatever.
I do
So
understand what
maybe
you're saying
the
about the
second
top
one
of the-
is,
of bringing
if you already
questions
have the
down
answer to
to
something,
first,
don't bring
Dr. B
it up at a board meeting.
But if it hasn't been discussed at all,
That's like a person.
then how can that be?
Well, if it hasn't
I
been
know.
discussed, you have to go through.
That's
the
like a
If they're
personal
bringing it
choice.
to us, how, that's why it's a discussion. That's why they're bringing it to us, because it's a discussion.
Mhm.
How can you not have a discussion if it's brought to us?
Well, sometimes there are items of information, but that's okay. You can just mark them on. It don't matter.
So we'll
Okay.
put this
Like a
as a
carrot.
question mark.
Can you just
We want-
number them so we can choose, or we're just gonna raise our hands?
No, we're gonna.
Oh, okay.
go through these. Get questions answered by the administration. Give people proper respect when speaking. Those are two that Daniel brought up.
Dave Daniel works.
You think these are important to?
Yeah, I think both of them are.
Everybody?
I think we already do that, don't we?
Oh my God.
Well, even if you do it, if it's an important piece, we
Yeah, I
can
mean.
put it up as a norm.
Put it as a norm.
Yeah, it's a norm.
Okay, so this might be a norm. Be conscientious of meeting time. In other words, like tonight, we're not very conscientious. It's good. But we had a lot to cover with the policies and everything else.
Well, can I ask a question? Like, what is a normal time? Like, what would you all be considered to be a good time to end, or like to be? Because it's like if you want to make a norm, like what's the norm to end
I'll
at a
stay till
certain
10
time?
o'clock. I don't mind staying late. I think Mike's the one that didn't want to stay late all the
I
time.
don't care either.
I don't think that we mind staying late.
There's boards that leave at 1.
But
Well, I don't wanna leave at 1
No, I don't want to leave it that way
Never.
either.
I want us
I'm
to.
serious.
But I want to know. But I
Do our
want to hear
work.
from y'all. That's why I'm asking the question, man. Because I don't know.
I
I
think
think for
it's-
this board, the norm has been prior to 9.
9.
And
Okay.
it's been
Yeah.
rare that we go out.
Yeah.
past
9
that.
is usually
So
late.
you
when
wanna
it's-
have,
think it was
that is the norm, that the meeting.
We just had
times
I don't want
not
to.
go past 9?
Because people get so focused, oh, we gotta go, I gotta go,
But
I
I
gotta
think-
go.
I think-
Every single meeting, it's
I
like,
think what happens is someone starts asking questions and they lose track of the fact that there's other people that may just want to be listening to the presentation to further listen, or, they want to ask a question and they can't get it in. or
Well,
something
and we
like
have
that.
one here that we'll look at for that, because that's one that is brought up as well. So we'll
Okay,
vote on
yeah.
that one. But to me, conscientious of meeting time, it goes back to, don't belabor a point forever if you know that it's going to create a domino effect on the meeting time.
That's a
okay?
good way to say it, yeah.
So I think being conscientious of time, so that you should ask the question, you should try to get your answer. If not, then later. Unless, like I said earlier, you're gonna make a decision about it tonight, then you have to make sure that,
Dr. Vegas, I think that is a false equivalency. I really do, because we are always out of here like around 8:30. I feel like that gets used to shut you down, to keep you from speaking, to keep you from asking, to keep you from inquiring, to like allow yourself the time to process information before you make decisions. You know, it kind of does the opposite. And it feels like everybody's saying, oh, we're staying till midnight every night. We need to do this. We don't.
But you have to be conscientious of the fact that when we have brownbacks, which is a lot of information that gets brought to us,
That's
it's
why
an
they
hour
were-
and a half.
That's why they were created, to.
We
hone in
never,
on it.
sometimes we don't even have time to go to something that I was really interested in because it took so much time with so many questions that we didn't get
Well,
through
then
the
there's too many
entire
things on
thing.
the agenda, right?
I got a recommendation, just to FYI. So you're saying that we could get questions in early enough to process some of these questions, or even to deal with this fact. Sometimes the questions are presented during the meeting is because of during the like it happens during the meeting, and not us. Like maybe she asked the question, like I asked the question, but I didn't hear the answer. So maybe in effect to where if I ask the question, then it gets distributed before the meeting to all. These are the questions that were asked. Here's what the answers were,
Oh, I see what you're saying.
and that way, the questions are being asked under that agenda item. You understand what I'm trying to say?
That's what I was saying
That's
about,
part of
like,
it. Go ahead, David.
that's kind of what I was saying about with Brandon. So there was a couple questions that I had on different things. I was like, hey, I really don't understand, or this column's a little vague in your presentation. Like, can you, when you give your presentation, say this is what's been brought up? And that's what he was like, the question was brought up, this is what I meant. I know this is hard to see.
And I think I made some point to Brandon. I said, okay, Brandon, can you reinstate to the board what your answer was? Because I don't know if they got the answer. Because I was kind of like, it was a good answer. Like it was a good answer to know that this being presented, we're leading away. I think it was about the remind. We're going away from it. Oh, okay. So that way the board knew that we're going away from it. If I didn't think that, I think something could have been brought to the board. Says, well, we're going like this is a question Mr. Bernal had, and we're going away from it. So that way everybody knows that I already asked the question, and the board is aware that I'm trying to be
Okay, so
transparent
I'm
to
gonna
them.
give you 2 or 3 things to think about on that one. First of all, and I know Yolanda said this, but the reason you're on this board, you've been selected to be on this board, is to oversee this system. Now, I'm on 2 or 3 boards, so I know sometimes it gets to be heavy duty because I have to read a lot of materials before I go there. But it is, as busy as you may be, if you made a commitment to be a board member, read the materials.
Oh, I do. Trust me.
Before, I know it's hard, Yolanda, I know what you're.
But Dr. Villegas, we have the ability to get that board book on Thursday or Wednesday. Why can't we just do that?
Yeah, well, the
Right?
board would,
Our board book. We could get it on a Wednesday instead of a Friday
and that's something you guys can do,
Right.
require Lloyd to have, I mean, it's up to you guys.
Right. The onus
Usually
is
you're
on
re-
us, right?
Usually it's a requirement that you get 72 hours before your board meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be honest, we're pulling our hair out at 4 o'clock on Friday to get it posted. We've made a number of attempts to try to move it to the day before. Each one failed. The one thing that we've looked at that we probably need to look at more and do more research is opening it up like a week before, and then trustees would have the ability to see it in draft form, but being built
As
over
it's
time
coming
would
in.
be helpful.
Oh,
I
wow.
think that would maybe a resolution. Now, the company, I think it's Board Docs, they weren't ready for that this came up about a year ago, I think. But maybe they're a little further ahead where we can turn that switch on, and then you guys will have access to where this board book is being developed and built, and you can go through, because some things are gonna come at the 5 PM hour Friday.
Yeah, which is fine if it's
But
only
when
one.
Dr. Villegas started the Brown Bag, I remember y'all used to bring stuff to us that was gonna be on the
Right.
agenda, so we kinda knew what was going on before
So
the
you
board
had- you were
happened.
well
And that was a
informed.
lot better. Now we just meet for Brown Bag to eat and blah, 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 and they could present to us what's gonna be, it's gonna be highlighted at the board meeting that we really need to know about at the Brown Bag, so we're kinda aware of it.
So that was
I
gonna
agree,
be my
Tom.
second point. If it's something like budget, because that takes more understanding, or a big curriculum piece, it's gonna take, it
Bring it
should
to the
first
brown
go
bag.
to a brown bag meeting, so you guys get that hour and a half to
Agreed.
fully understand it.
That's what he's
ask the
saying.
Started that,
questions,
yes.
And then you just bring it to the board The presenter might still present it for the community because there's, you know, you
You
have
have to.
people attending.
Mhm.
But you already have the information.
Little highlight
so,
one,
The
yeah.
good thing
you
is we
know,
still
you-
post all
you
of our
can
stuff,
ask
so even if there's
questions at
questions
brown
asked in the
bag.
brown bag during that presentation.
I mean,
Yeah.
we can use our common sense about being considerate about the board time. I mean, we just don't need to belabor something. We can ask the question, we can get our answer, and if we don't like the answer, we can try to phrase it a different way. But ultimately, we either are gonna agree with the recommendation or we're not.
Yeah.
We don't need to kill it. So,
Right.
we can just.
And the
be
other
kind-
thing is you can request, especially if several board members have questions,
Mm-hmm.
Lloyd could say, not Lloyd, but Sylvester, why don't we pull that?
Yes,
give
which
it
we've
back
done.
so that we can have further study on it.
Mhm.
That way, you know, you might brown bag it again and
Right.
do whatever. But the bottom line is you do not wanna have board meetings that go on and on and on. That's the bottom line. So you need to be conscientious of time.
Yeah.
But you still need to ask questions, whether they're hard questions or easy questions, you need to ask, okay? If you feel like you have not received the thing that you need to from it, then put it aside, you know, give it back to the superintendent to come back to the next meeting,
Yeah.
okay? And I think this goes back to not hoarding the floor, going back to the same questions, you know, don't belabor it so much. So I'm gonna put that, I like this. Allow presentations to be finished before asking of questions. Is that a problem?
It's a problem for us to do. I think it's a good practice. It's hard for me to do that. But I do believe that if you listen to the whole presentation, 9 times out of 10, your question's answered.
Yeah.
So I think we do need to be better as a board not to ask the question. Unless they're presenting and they get to a spot and they go, do you have any questions before I
Yeah.
proceed? Then we can ask your question.
Yeah, because they're asking for your input
Right.
at that point.
So I do think that's a good one.
Do not speak without being recognized. And that's, the board president should recognize, and obviously, most of the time you say, I want to speak, and the board president
And I'll
recognizes.
say that as board president, I don't wanna go there because that hasn't been the norm. But because it is not only part of our, policy and part of, Robert's Rules of Order, I think if I need to, I will implement it.
I
But-
think
but
there,
I don't think it's something that has to be a norm, because, I mean, we've done pretty well without it.
well, it's in part of your regulations, if you accept the regulations that you've looked at tonight, it says there that the board
Yeah.
president recognizes board members who need to
A
speak.
lot of districts even have the little microphones with the lights.
The light.
The board president has a light for, with everybody's name.
I'm recognizing you.
And you gotta push that light, and I know, I gotta write down who would push the light first.
So do you want to keep this as a norm?
I think it's a good norm. I think sometimes the president doesn't see that, and so
Yeah.
I think it's okay if I say, hey, Flo wants to say something,
Yeah.
or somebody brings it to his attention, and then he can recognize
And you
it.
sit next to him, so you can
Well, I
kind
think
of
we
take
need
him
to,
under.
we need to agree on how it is that we're gonna make ourselves seen and what is the signal that we need to give, you know what I'm saying?
And that you can talk about, so how do we want to do
We
that?
do the poncho flag.
I'll give everybody tennis balls.
Tennis balls.
Do not, this was Yolanda, do not shut people down. Do we shut people down?
I mean, as
Sometimes.
far as talk,
So-
what was that?
Yeah.
But some people feel bad that you do
No, I
that.
know.
Now, it's how you shut people down too sometimes, you
Yeah.
know? So you need to be cognizant of your behavior towards the other person.
Yeah.
It's, one thing is to say, you know, I really want to continue to discuss, for us to hear more on this, but we have to be cognizant of the time. Right now, is it okay if we take it to the next meeting, or if we take it to the brown bag, or whatever, you know? Can we have further discussion about, be respectful of how you, ask people to consider things that may be creating a problem. Okay?
Well, we have an issue that we don't agree on.
Yep.
And so every time it's brought up at a meeting, we don't agree with it, and ultimately it's gonna come down to a vote. We all have our feelings of how you're gonna vote on that issue.
Right.
And so, when you express your opinion on that issue, and then you vote on it, and the answer's no, well then, you gotta move on.
But you still listen.
But you still listen, but you can't keep listening for the next half hour when the
I've
point's
never
already
spoken
been
for
made.
half an hour.
I don't mean half hour, like
Yeah.
too long, whatever.
Well, at all. I spoke 3 minutes, and I didn't get the information that I wanted to get out.
Okay, but I'm just saying.
And the information wasn't just for them, it's for our community too.
Yes, for the
Because we're a public
community.
meeting.
Yes, you're right.
So, maybe, do you wanna keep this norm? I think that's.
Well, I mean, we
important.
shouldn't shut people down, but if we're gonna develop norms on, like, the time, like, we could say, if, as long as I've been on the board, I don't think we've ever done where a board member has made a presentation about something to the
Yeah.
board. I've never seen it, but I mean, it can be done apparently. We can say that there's a time limit on that, and if you can get your point across in 10 minutes or 15 minutes, however long you wanna say, I don't think it should be indefinite.
Didn't he say it was the same amount of time that the other
No,
people
we could
get?
decide.
3 minutes?
I think
Yeah,
that
you
the
can
board.
Yeah, it
say
should be the
that.
same amount of
No,
time.
because
No.
we're public figures, we're board members, we have responsibilities, people vote for us, and we have information that we need to digest and take in, and we also have information that we need to get out.
But when you do a presentation, that's not on the agenda. I mean,
No, it
wasn't
is
on
an
the
agenda
Well,
item.
If it's
It
put,
was.
apparently if it's put on the agenda by a board member, if a
It
board
was
member,
on the
a-
agenda.
okay, can I just finish? If the board member requests something to be on the agenda, it gets on the agenda, either before, you're gonna have to decide before what the time limit is, to be fair. So we can decide as a board, okay, if a board member wants to bring something and present it to the rest of the board, you have 10 minutes to present that. Or whatever, 5, 10 minutes, whatever it is. It might be 10 minutes, we give other people 10 minutes. So if it's 10 minutes, then you get to discuss it for 10 minutes.
And you
And
let
then-
that board member know ahead of time.
Yes, you,
know, you're
ahead of
gonna
time.
have- we're gonna put this on the agenda and you're gonna have 10 minutes to make sure that everybody gets the information.
Correct. And then after that, then you vote on whatever, and then there you go.
Well, the only thing I would say on that is just presentation's 10 minutes and then a discussion to happen after the presentation. Because if we were to have a presentation, I could do it in 10 minutes, like here's 10 minutes. And then after the fact of that, we discuss about it. Like, what's the discussion time then? That which you.
There's no-
See,
we've
then
never
there's not
had
a
a
discussion
discussion.
time, that's where.
Legally, we can't place an agenda item time limit on any agenda item. And that agenda item time limit is to include presentation and discussion. Okay, and it's written. I mean,
So we just have to put that in our
So-
policy. We have,
Well, it's
that has
already
to be,
there.
I know, but that has to be a norm that we're all aware of, and so that we can't,
So when you look at those regulations that you're gonna study,
yeah,
remember this is an important one.
yeah.
That you have to look at that, and if you're going to identify a time factor, then make sure that it's, and everybody has to vote on it.
Does that
Right.
mean that everybody can have 10 minutes to speak on the same item? Or?
No, just the
You
presenter.
don't put a time limit on a person, you put a time limit on the agenda item.
Yeah. I mean, I think so. I think that would work. I mean, then you're not being, well, when we were deciding to open up schools during COVID, I mean, I hijacked one of those meetings because I'm like, we gotta get our kids back in school. I went on and on and on and on about it. And even after I talked to Lloyd, I told Lloyd I don't agree with the decision, so I'm gonna talk about it at the meeting. So you don't wanna have, to. You don't wanna hijack a meeting. You know, you just,
We're not being fresh, he's not being fresh, he's just, we're gonna do a little activity.
Oh, okay.
okay. Anyway, I think that's a good one, and we need to
Okay.
clarify
How
time.
about refrain from negative body language?
Guilty.
I mean, how can you,
Flo, I mean,
that's like,
we have to be better.
but it's
I
not a
roll
norm,
my
I don't
eyes.
think it's a norm, right? I don't
Yeah,
think it should be a
it should
normal
be a
thing.
behavior that we
Don't want to do.
pledge to do our best not to do. I roll my eyes all the
What
time.
you need to look at is norms are behaviors, right?
Me too.
And I go like this.
Behaviors affect people.
Yeah,
Norms are behaviors.
Yes.
And I-
Behaviors affect
I'm gonna be honest with you, sometimes that stresses me, like it gets me more like, oh God, I gotta, cause say if I see somebody do this, and then I'm like, oh, I get more nervous, and then I start studying, and I can't get my point across, and then it slows me down.
I'm gonna do my best.
I know, but I'm just letting you know how it works. Like, if you don't know, then how do I help you understand what's going on? Yeah.
Just kick me.
Just don't go crazy on us.
I'm not like that.
Sometimes the stuff isn't meant towards people as much as like, I put my head down.
I don't mean it literally.
But I get nervous because I don't want to. Look, I'm considerate to everybody's time, and I'm like, so I start getting more nervous, and it's scary. It's scary. You'll see when it starts. The nervous picks in, and the anxiety kicks in.
No,
So,
thumbtack.
Okay, let's
Okay.
get going.
I've never noticed.
I've
Peter.
got to get this done, you guys,
Okay.
and then.
Okay.
Listen for understanding.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This one is.
That's part of the other one,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Work not to interpret perspectives at a personal level.
I think that's very important, though.
What does that mean?
Never take anything personal. It's,
Yeah.
you make sure everything's about
Okay?
the topic.
It's
And
business,
then
as usual.
create respect for the team. And it goes back to trust, okay?
Right, trust.
Trust and respect doesn't necessarily mean I love you and I like you. It just means I trust that you're doing this in the best interest of the system that we're responsible for, okay? So I respect your opinion. I trust that you're doing it in the best interest of this system. I may not see it the way you do, but I'm not going to put you down because of it. Or I'm not going to make it a personal thing, you know, those kinds of things. So it's more about respecting teamwork. Okay, real quick, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
You're fixing it.
I'm gonna fix them. I'm going to give them to Lloyd to send out to you guys.
Like the
From
person-
there, you're gonna vote for the 7 that you feel the strongest about.
Okay.
And fix the words. The verbiage
Oh,
is
no, I
terrible.
Right now, I'm
Because
just
we're
trying to hear
telling you,
what you
we're
were
telling
saying.
you what we like in the negative. We're giving you like the verbiage in the negative. It needs to be in the positive, right?
No, I'll work with it.
I apologize, but I have to leave.
Okay.
After my 8 o'clock pills, I have
Okay.
1 hour, and I
We'll
took them
let
at
you.
8:20.
Would you mind humoring me for just the
No,
last
we'll
little
stay.
activity?
I'll adjourn the meeting.
Okay, sorry, Sylvester.
I'm sorry.
That's
team,
okay,
but-
we understand. Okay, so I'm going to do Lloyd's, and I'm going to go now. But here's what one of the things that has come out from this discussion is the fact that we all are coming from different perspectives, and because we serve different little areas of the community, and because, we have our own values and beliefs personally, etc. But we're here as a board and as a team. So one of the things that I want you to do for me tonight, because this has always been a positive, I've done this before with principals, and Lloyd was the principal at the time, and with the senior staff, etc. What is it that you like about what that person brings to the team? And you have to do one positive thing for each, like you guys, like James needs to do one for each of you. Ida needs to do one for everybody, and so on. Okay, so you're gonna go and write something. I bought this paper, so you humor me, because then you can put it in a little frame, and it reminds you all the time how valuable you are to the system. And that even though we have our differences, even though we see things in different ways, and sometimes we're uncomfortable with it, there's great stuff that we do together, and that you bring to this table to make it happen. Okay, so I'm going to give you the rest of this time before you go, and I want to thank you because I love coming here. So bring me back whenever you want to,
We will.
even if Lloyd leaves us.
We love you.
I'll drive her over here.
We're gonna bring both of you together
Yeah,
to come help us.
that would be fun.
This is your exit ticket out. Is the,
Oh, it's the.
Get a pen or
I'm gonna use one
whatever
of those
you want.
highlighters, because that way you can see it.
Okay,
Well, I'm gonna.
and you go around, get somebody. You
Don't
can
move.
Write on it like, come here, Pete.
What's an easy word for me?
What does it do?
Can we take it off and write and then put
I'm
it back
going
on?
to,
Fun, feels like
What's
that.
that?
No, take it off and write and then.
Well,
put it
sure.
back on.
Oh, you're
I'm
gonna take it
gonna
off?
start.
Well,
What do
no.
you-
You can start at the-
What do you think about
You
it?
took it off?
Well, because it was like folding when I was gonna try to write.
What was the word from the he was there?
I love you, ma'am.
Okay.
Oh, God, this is the smirk and the smile you
I look
give.
at him and he starts laughing at me.
Just put hard work. Hard working.
I can't spell it.
We just
Okay.
walk around and write on people or what?
We can.
Would this be tagging somebody? Huh?
Yeah, we're
Lloyd,
tagging.
I'm gonna write something.
Oh, thank you. I got a nice note.
I'd have put kick me on the back of mine.
I was gonna think of kindergarten.
Let me do yours, James.
Don't scare me, Yolanda.
With that marker all the way off the paper down, sure.
All right.
Where's yours?
No, no,
Do you have
no,
one?
no, you guys do it with each other. Come here.
Well,
Come here, big guy.
Oh, what about yours? We're
I'll
not
do
doing
your
it.
text.
But you're not gonna do, you don't have one.
I'm gonna write a book.
Trying to step.
Are you done with me?
Okay.
Let me see,
Yolanda?
right here.
I'm just putting like few words.
I'm just
Lloyd's
putting
writing.
one word.
I must be awesome because Lloyd's been writing for a while.
I forgot to spell the
I'm just doing one word.
Come here.
Stop moving, you messed me up.
Take a picture right there.
Okay, this is not gonna look very good because you
Be
moved.
sure everybody gets one from everybody, okay? You can't leave until everybody gets one.
I know.
Let me move here. Move here.
I haven't thought yet for you. I was thinking for her.
I have him too. Just a- You can do whatever you want, sir. I still love you.
So shall I write the six of
Well, let James do it first and then you.
Let me do
do
yours while she does mine.
Guys, you are killing me because I'm not good at this stuff. Now you're coming to take care of. Let's see here.
We did this one time and I still have mine. I love it.
Yes, I think that this is such a fun activity.
We did it
I
one
have one
time
from the
at
last time, too.
the bank, when we met at the bank. I think the
Mhm.
first training.
I have that one too.
You do?
Yeah.
Mhm.
I have mine in frames at home because.
Ours is in
I
a
got
frame.
memory.
I think mine is
I-
framed too.
I have mine in a frame. You gave it to us in frames. Or
Was it-
somebody.
was it-
Well, I bought
I
a
think it
frame.
might have been in
I,
frame, yeah.
I bought a frame for you guys. This time I bought this.
Get over here, James.
No te muevas.
Es que me está moviendo James.
You're killing me. I'm not good at this kind of stuff, so. Okay, Flo, come on, really?
Don't move.
That- Let me do you, Daniel. I can do yours.
Okay.
Bernard.
Don't move.
Are we gonna take you back home with us? It's on our back?
You're not done yet, are you?
Oh, you're gonna take it off and look at
My
it.
wife's gonna wonder what's going on here.
As long as it's not glitter and perfume.
Okay.
Alright, ready?
I'm gonna, I think I see that.
I haven't done it on this.
Get you something here.
Cause you
Like
always,
Edward Scissorhands.
no, cause you always make us wear green. Yours is green.
Is there another color? That's my
Not in
color-
our world.
That's my color wheel.
Yeah. 10 shades of green.
You see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You're missing one.
That's me. I haven't got
I think,
Everybody should have
I
7.
think she
I
has
gotta get
7.
Lloyd.
1,
Well, you
2,
do
3,
flow.
4.
that. Please.
Oh, yes. That it?
I did you, right?
Oh, yeah.
Daniel, I haven't done yours yet. I'll do it after Pete.
Oh, I haven't done Ida. Right?
I think you did.
I can't think of a word, Lloyd, but I know what I wanna say, but I can't think of the word. Let me think of it.
I'm done. I got 7. I got 7.
Let's see.
Like, you gotta get back.
1, 2,
I did only one
3,
word with everybody.
4, 5. You
Huh?
need 2 more.
Everybody got me
You have
already.
mine. Who has not done
Everybody's got
James?
me. Everybody's got me.
Who has not done James?
Everybody got me.
Oh, there's 1, 2, 3,
I don't know what Lloyd
4.
did.
1,
there's
2,
only
3,
gonna be
4, 5,
7.
6. 7 with me. Did you do James?
I did.
I think
Lloyd, did
Lloyd's
you do
Lloyd's
James?
got to do me yet.
Yolanda, did you do James?
Yeah, I did James. He's got a little marker.
Have you done James, Lloyd?
Did I?
Well, I don't think he did.
Oh,
How many do we have to have?
1, 2, and then I got it.
How many we have to have on there?
7.
Who did I not do? You don't
Do I
have
have
one,
7?
Dr. V, right?
No, she doesn't have
Okay, so
one.
it's 7.
Do I have 7?
Lloyd does, right?
Just in case you.
Yeah, those, Lloyd does.
2, 3, 4, 5. No, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I don't know if this is 1. 1, 2.
No,
I
you're not.
put this together for 5. You have 5 or 6. You're missing 1.
It's-
1 or 2.
I got it.
Yeah, because it would have been,
How many should we have?
No, wait, I did.
1, 2, 3,
I don't know.
4,
I'm missing
5,
some.
6, 7,
We should have 7.
and 8 with me. Because I wrote on some.
Oh, Sylvester
On
left.
everybody.
Hey, and there's no spell check on these, so
Did
don't
you
judge
I
me.
think I wrote on yours.
Sometimes it's just.
I'm missing like
Yeah, I did.
1 or 2.
And then I
I
get
can't
nervous.
tell.
1,
See y'all. Or like I see James,
3,
I get nervous.
4,
I start trying
5.
to figure out like, ah.
Yeah.
But I'm trying
I'm
to do,
missing
because I
2.
know James always trying to get out of
Who hasn't done
James,
Yolanda?
9:30, because I got all my questions.
Lloyd?
I have her.
I don't know.
I
Did you
did,
do
yes,
Yolanda?
ma'am.
You
Oh,
did
yeah, I
Yolanda?
I'm the best.
How many I have?
You sure?
Yes.
1,
Still
2,
haven't
3,
done
4, 5, 6.
Oh, everybody written something. I thought maybe they didn't. They thought they did.
Somebody's missing from James.
I did
1,
James.
2,
I have one
3.
missing too. Check
4,
Flo. Did you?
Flo, you done me, Flo? Did you do it?
Yeah.
It's missing one.
I did yours too.
No, I don't know. Everybody
You
done
are
mine.
missing
Maybe,
yours.
maybe they're together. Maybe somebody wrote together.
No,
Sorry.
1, 2, 3,
In my mind, I did it.
4.
You can't count yourself as
We all look the
7.
same, Lloyd.
You can't count yourself, guys. It's only
Starting to blur.
7.
Yours,
And Sylvester's not
Yeah,
here.
you laughed at me.
6,
Because you
7.
moved.
Did you do it?
You've got
Yes,
7.
it's
Okay.
not very,
All right, give me
it's
one.
a little bit messy, you
Where
can
did
tell.
you
Okay.
where did you-
I'm messy too.
Do I have it back
Send mine
there?
off.
Yeah, I think
You have yours.
I have mine?
Yeah.
Can you take it off?
There should only be 7 on each one,
Okay,
right?
Should
Yeah.
leave already?
You guys, frame these because every time you start feeling like they don't like me, you know they love you. You know,
I love all of y'all.
They may,
Let y'all know.
they may not like some of what you say sometimes, but you're great to be on this board.
Thank you, Dr. Villegas.
Thank you guys for
We're gonna-
having me back. I enjoyed it.
Are we gonna get together and do the rest of this thing sometime?
Yes, I'm gonna, with Lloyd, because the other stuff that's in here, I need, this is all part of what I think you should do during some of your,
Guys, I have
Brown
to
bag
leave. You guys
lunches?
I gotta go. I got company at home.
Yeah, that's it.
I have to close the meeting.
Oh. We're adjourning the meeting at 9:10.